What's up, everybody? This is KARAK with ACG, and I'm here with Silver and Johnny for the Best Gaming Podcast number 478. Thank you, everybody, for showing back up after we missed last Friday. That is completely on me. These guys were ready to go, but I had some technical issues, so we missed that one. And as we stated on multiple podcasts, but I just want to do another reminder, Wednesdays right now are still on a hiatus until I figure out the channel. So let's just jump into it. Let's not waste any time. What have you guys been playing? Let's go Silver first. What's the big jump? What are you dived into?
Not very much, honestly. Just Warhammer 3 still off and on, really mostly. Also a bit of Phasmophobia again, because there's a new map for it, Lighthouse. It's really good.
Phasmophobia. What kind of game even is that? I haven't played that. I don't think I played that.
It's kind of a like detective horror game where the objective is that you go into a house or building of some sort, and you try and ascertain the nature of the ghost that's haunting the place. And as you are trying to ascertain that, there's the danger that the ghost might hunt and kill you. So you have to balance those things. And as you're trying to discover like pieces of evidence that can help you identify the ghost, you incur you start to lose your sanity as ghost events happen, and you're moving through darkness and stuff. And then the ghost starts hunting you, and then you have to hide and run away from it and stuff because you can't fight it.
Oh, damn.
And it's really fun, especially when you play it with friends, because there are really awesome social dynamics with it, especially when you use like local voice chat, because you can hear each other from like across the rooms and stuff with faded. So you'll hear someone screaming in the other room when the ghost kills them or whatever. You can mess with each other in all kinds of ways. It's a game that's been consistently fun to play with friends for me for the past few years, and one that I still dust off on occasion.
Reminds me a little bit of Lethal Company. Is that the other one that does the voice nearby? Where you talk to somebody and then as you get farther away, you can't hear them. It's a little bit more difficult. Is it
Right.
like co-op 4-player, co-op 2-player, 3?
Up to 4 players. Co-op,
what are you guys usually doing?
We go like 3 players or so max. Sometimes it's just Lemon and me. Sometimes it's Lemon, me, and others. But like 2 to 3 is what we usually play.
Gotcha. What about you, Johnny?
I've been playing a little bit of League, but mostly Shadow of the Erdtree. That's been the main attraction the past couple weeks.
Is that going to die out?
Most people, I think.
Final Fantasy 14, pops.
No, I don't think I will ever play Final Fantasy 14 again.
Really?
Yeah.
Never thought I'd hear you say that. Are you just what?
I don't like the gameplay. I realized that I played like 300 hours.
I know you did. This is this is making my heart warm for I like the cynicism.
I'm
just joking.
Well, the thing is, I kept like saying, well, I've already put so much into it that I have to keep going, kind of like a sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, sunk cost fallacy. But in reality, what I loved about the game was the music. Pretty much like 80% was the music, and some of the story was cool. But let's be honest, there's a lot of filler, just because of the nature of what it is. Right, it's an MMO, so there's a lot of just talking to this person and then talking to them again slightly over there after killing 20 mobs.
Right.
And the reality is, I just kind of like stopped lying to myself. I don't enjoy the gameplay. The having 20 things I have to hit in perfect succession. The moment to moment is not enjoyable. At least the classes that I played didn't have a dynamic like rotation based on something that was happening. It was always the same sequence of buttons that I had to press.
Right.
And so many, right? I mean, you have like a crazy amount. So it just kind of became mind-numbing to be pressing this same sequence of buttons over and over without any because some classes do have to react if the enemy is doing something like this, then you should do this other rotation. And there's like one variation, but that's pretty much it. So I kind of realized I don't like the gameplay really. at a basic level. And then it was always a single player game for me as well. So I don't have I think for a lot of people, that is a social thing where they jump in and, they're goofing around and limza, laminza, whatever. I never had that. So for me, it's purely like a single player thing. And if I'm not enjoying the pacing of the story, or if it feels dragged on, and really mostly what I'm enjoying is the music, I can enjoy that without, putting in a ton, like hundreds of hours.
Put it on the playlist.
Get through it. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's break down a little bit of the Erdtree. We'll talk about the difficulty and stuff like that. But what are your first thoughts of Erdtree?
Well, it's evolved a little bit. First thoughts. Well, it looks incredible. The new location is amazing, and I keep being surprised and impressed as I'm progressing to finding like different things they've done.
Right.
And I know people criticize them for the copy paste, but the reality is there's a lot of brand new creative stuff in there. Some amazing locations, and you go into a dungeon and that leads into a huge open area. It's like, it really is huge. I think it's not unfair to say it is by far the biggest DLC they've ever done, right? So yeah, I absolutely love the exploration in it. It does bring me back to the feeling of playing the original game for the first time and just being like, whoa, the big areas and everything.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it seems like it's exactly the DLC most people wanted. We'll talk about the difficulty in a bit, but I haven't really heard any big complaints other than some performance issues there, which, I feel like that's just sort of their thing when they release a game, whether it be Bloodborne or whether it be even Sekiro had some issues, and certainly the original had some issues. So it's like, it's not too surprising, but it certainly feels like everybody really is like
Elden Ring as well. Yeah.
Elden Ring was Greek tragedy. Red Wolf, $5 super chat. So glad to see you guys back. My favorite podcast. What are some of your favorite side features in games? Cleaning guns and Red Dead 2. That's so weird he mentions that, because we had maybe an hour-long discussion yesterday in the voice chat about that, about the gun. I think we were talking about guns in general in games, and then it got on to Red Dead's idea of how it doesn't jam the gun. It just makes it do a little less damage, a little less accuracy. And when I saw Jay Reaper playing Stalker, and his guns were jamming every 3 seconds, no matter how clean they were. And it became this, like, what's too much side activity in a game to where it isn't fun. Favorite side activities in a game? Are these side activities? I don't know if this is side activities, but one of the best experiences I've had in the past couple of years would be, I don't know about you guys, but ESO's little globes. They're these glowing globes that you find around ESO, its world. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a sound like a nin root, I think is what they were called in Skyrim, but they have this weird, I'm over here, like Quidditch, the Quidditch ball sound. And there was something about it that caused me to just go from place to place. I mean, I explored, it brought me back to my WoW days of exploring. And that to me, it may not be a side activity in the way that he's talking about, but for me it was. Do you guys have a side activity that you guys have enjoyed?
I have a few. I always think back to GTA San Andreas and like going to the gym and stuff. There was, Pump and Iron. I forgot. You didn't have to do it, but it was fun. Right. I kind of had a routine about going, and then I think more recently though, maybe like the suits in Spider-Man. Would that qualify?
No,
like
that does, because they're not required. So. You get them, they do different things. Yeah, for sure.
And I would do like every time I would start a new mission, I would put on a suit. Almost like I'm suiting up for the mission. For that mission. That's awesome. Yeah. The loadout, the Spider-Man loadout. That's cool. What about you, Silver? Do you have any that, like, even if it's like an older one?
I think the Legend of Zelda games always had really interesting or fun side games, from like fishing to all kinds of other stuff you could do, like treasure hunting in Wind Waker. There was always a lot of like fun stuff to do. Sometimes quite inventive, sometimes quite creative. Like ways to that you were like chasing around pieces of heart and stuff to get more health. Yeah, that's one that kind of sticks out in my memory. All those some of those little mini games. Some of them weren't very enjoyable, but quite a few of them were.
That's what I was going to bring up, is that, you know, that it for me, I almost never find a mediocre minigame. I'm either like, okay, I really like this, or okay, this does not speak to me whatsoever.
Right.
I'm not going back to it. Yeah, good question. Thank you very much. We also have some questions from patrons, which we're going to get through here real quick. The Vast Deference, who's been a podcast and patron for a long time, because I recognize that name, says, what do you guys think of the Concord previews? I also stepped up my patron pledge, had to drop some others, but they seem to be filling every video with huge ads. Starting back, done with that shit. I paused my game to be here. I get that joke. Let's see here. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you've seen the Concord previews. Concord, if you don't remember what that is, it's that hero game that's coming from Sony. I'll just say that it's nice to see people talking positive about it, but they are previews, and it is a sectioned off. Same thing happens when I do a preview. I always tell people, this doesn't mean it's going to be great. This is just sort of what I played, what I experienced. Concord had some positive. I saw a lot of people saying this feels like maybe a 1.5 to the hero genre, where the other ones have felt just like ones, a copy. This feels like it's got a couple extra pages. It's the next chapter. We'll have to see. I'm not really delighted in what I've seen of it so far, but
yeah, I
mean, it is what it is.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm literally not seeing anything that's pulling me in from it.
Dude, it's so weird because you always hear about catfishing, somebody making themselves look better. You go on a date and they're not. This game did the opposite. It's like, hey, here's us.
Yeah.
And it's the dude in his whitey-tighty, stained a little bit, questionable stains, Cheeto. And you're just like, dude, I like you. You're a normal human being, but goddamn, put some clothes on. And previews, previews of those clothes. And it seems like, as I'm seeing a little bit more, I'm like, okay, I sort of like this idea, like that idea. But man, it's going into a contested area. Overwatch, of course, too, has been somewhat of a disaster. So it's got that going for it. But I don't know if it's... I don't know. Okay, I'll ask you guys this. Let's say you're a sports star. Let's say you're a track runner and you're consistently number 3. If number 1 and 2 get popped for drugs and aren't in for 2 more years, do you still feel like number
good.
1? Right, but do you feel like number 1, or do you feel like you're just number 3 because the other 2 are gone? That's what I'm sort of wondering about this is, will I react to Concord as if it's number 3, but because Overwatch screwed up?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's negating. Go ahead.
I mean, assuming that you weren't also taking drugs and just hadn't.
Yeah, no, I'm assuming that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you would feel like.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to be exciting to see that game come out because I don't know. I don't see any drive for it, as in from gamers. I haven't really seen anybody who wants to give up whatever they're playing.
Yeah,
and
I would agree. And it's also
yeah.
not free to play, right? So it's not like
yeah, is that one the one that's coming with the I think you're right. I think it's like it's like 40 or 60 and then everything's cosmetic.
I think so.
And we know what that means, right? Red shirt, black shirt, brown shirt, blue shirt.
Yeah.
And then your cosmetics look phenomenal. That's my hope, is that doesn't happen. I would love for a company to say, dude, our guys look wicked, and they're going to look wicked-er when we add the other stuff.
Yeah.
Raspberry, $5 super chat. Have you guys seen the new Souls-like game, Intria? It's hard to know exactly.
Yeah,
Inotria. I have.
I did look. What did you think? I'm curious.
Pretty rough looking.
Very rough.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I mean, that is
it looked very rough around the edges.
Yeah. At Anti-Sky, SEK 27 super chat, Johnny the Goat. I hope that's not about your looks, and I hope that just means
the goat.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope he's not expecting you to go like
Sweden crowns.
Sweden crowns. Oh, is it? Oh, well. Yeah. Well, pip. And then Gatherings Galaxy. Yeah, exactly. $5 super chat. If the other 2 were cheating, were they ever really number 1? Yes, your roided up guy beat the other roided up guy. Still number 1. Even if I wasn't doing it. It's just the way it works. moving on from there for Concord, I am excited to check out more of the stuff after the previews, but we also have some other questions, so I'm going to throw these in Super Chat, like I said, so we can get these. Nothing against doing them, obviously, but we have some news to cover. But we've been gone for let's see, we missed
just a 1 week we skipped, right?
Dude, it feels. Yeah. I feel like the lady in Titanic. It feels like it's been
it feels longer,
been
man.
87 years. Marshall, who's been a patron since the first day of the podcast, says, Karak, with so many big YouTubers leaving and so many reporting massive losses in video views since January, have you thought of quitting? No, but I will tell you guys this. I figured something out. I think I talked about this last podcast. We'll just cover it quickly. Because I didn't do sponsorships when the views went down, I didn't see a massive drop in money. So it took me an extra 2 months to figure out what was going on. And I got to say, that has been... It has always helped me with companies who know that I don't do that. In fact, I had a guy who wanted me to review his game, and he said, I saw on your Twitter you don't take codes, so I'm just going to give you a link. And I was like, I will if you give me if it's early, but if it's on time and you want me to check it out, check it out. And I got to check it out. And so it helps me on both sides, and it has actually helped me here because I financially am set up in a way where I take a little bit from Patron, a little bit from YouTube. And because ad people aren't looking at my videos going, oh my God, you're getting less views, because everybody is currently. I mean, we're talking half for a lot of big video game reviewers, websites. Doesn't harm me as much. It still sucks because you want people to see your shit, but it is what it is. And I want to say thank you very much to Marshall, who's been around forever. Appreciate you sticking through all the weird bullshit that we've done and missed podcasts and stuff. You're definitely awesome. Mikey says, Lost Records is delayed, Karak. You can't be a 17-year-old girl until 2025. What will you do?
Oh, that's the Life is Strange one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the, I don't know if you know which one, Silver, but it's like Life is Strange, but with like 1980s mixtapes involved in the music. It's like a flock of seagulls. Right. So it's all based in that Stranger Things time frame. I'm sad that it's delayed, man. I love that. I like those kind of games. They're like one of the best things ever. But they're probably only for me, maybe, and Johnny, maybe. I don't know. Silver, did you do Life is Strange? I'm sorry if you have.
No, still like that. It's still the guiltiest one, guiltiest member of my backlog club.
Your backlog,
the old backlog coming back to bite you.
And it is the guiltiest member because it is also for me. Frankly, I would enjoy it. I know I would enjoy it when I play it.
Yeah.
It's just a question of actually getting around to doing it.
Next up, Z-Trek Knock 50. That's Norwegian kroner. I'm just joking. Those are two different places. What's Knock? Does anybody know?
I think it might be Norwegian.
But it's not kroner, right?
It is still cool.
Is it kroner? Okay. Hey, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
Wondering about getting a Steam Deck, but afraid the hardware will soon be obsolete with newer games. Am I right to worry? It's obsolete now for newer games. You just have to realize that when you get the hardware, just reset your thought process to what your expectations are. It'll play some newer games, but it'll play them at a frame rate that's quite low or performance that's quite low. But that's okay because it's a different kind of thing. It's a handheld, You shouldn't expect a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
So, I think that's completely okay. Dead Captain James says, I feel like Karak just isn't making as many reviews as before. I prefer the podcast personally, but I miss how often he used to review games. Don't have games, buddy. It has nothing to do with me and everything to do with codes and the lack of games coming out right now that we're giving codes. Nothing to do with me. I would love to do a review every day. They do better than the podcasts, even though I like these more because I get to hang with these guys. But it has nothing to do with me, unfortunately.
Ups and downs.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's just sort of the way it is. Next up, Ice Seuss says, Karak, the podcast is coming back. I joined Discord. It's been too long. You ladies and gents are solid. Best $10 I spent in years, other than the one night we won't talk about. Okay.
Thank you so much. We won't talk about it then.
Yeah, we won't bring that up. That gives me the willies a little bit.
It's concerning.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people jumping in, and it's been great, man. I absolutely appreciate it. It's awesome to see people there. Brandon Martin, member for 4 months. What's the one game that you guys have many hours in? Have so many hours in? He says, mine is Modern Warfare 3, 2023. I have over 1,200 hours now. Have a great weekend.
Damn.
Damn. That's a lot of hours. Whoo. Well, what's a game I saw Silver streaming in the Discord, what, two or 3 days ago, you're streaming American Truck Simulator. I'm sure you've got the boatload of hours in that bastard, right?
Oh, I'm sure I do. I mean, I can look it up.
While he's looking it up, what about you, Johnny?
In my early years, I played over 5,000 hours of Dota 2. Yeah.
I mean, I have 200 hours in American Truck Simulator, which
5,000
doesn't really
200
put it in.
Yeah, but it was over many years.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah.
Like Tetris is, of course, still the big one for me, with probably 10,000 over my life.
Yeah, probably for me too.
Totally.
That and Columns would both be really high. It is funny. Have you guys ever thought you played a game a lot and then you went and looked at your numbers and they're stunningly low compared to what you assumed?
Absolutely.
Sometimes,
yeah. There's been times where I've looked at a game and been like, dude, I don't even want to look at this number. I'm sure it's like...
there have been times where the opposite is true as well.
Oh, where you didn't think you spent a lot, and then you're all... Yeah. You're like, did I leave this up and running in the background?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely... For me, one of the longest would be, well, like, let's not go with the easy answers. KOTOR, I don't bring that up as much as I used to. I definitely have a lot of hours in that. Got a lot of hours in Back 4 Blood now. Mostly because we've been doing a boatload of co-op games in the Patron Discord, and it's been Division, Back 4 Blood, those kind of shooter games, which are always fun. I'm trying to think of something that's not an MMO. Columns, I'm like Silver, where I Tetris across like 9 devices. Columns, poker, what is it called? Poker Smash on the 360. I would guess is probably at 1,000 hours, but it's very hard to accrue that many hours if you play multiple games. If you play one game and sit on it, it's not hard, but it's certainly not easy to just accrue, fucking 1,200
like
hours.
I just looked up, like Warhammer 3 for me is at nearly 800 hours now. I think if you probably accumulate Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, they're probably over 2,000.
That would make sense, because you've been talking about that since the very, even prior to the podcast starting. Those were your thing. Oregon Fresh says, I've learned more about currencies in this podcast than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Dead Captain says, hate that publishers aren't giving you as many codes. Well, yes, that too, but there's not as many games. Go look at the game release list. It's small. I mean, there's just not that many games, and some of these guys don't have their code ready until day one, and if we are on a podcast day, can't do them. This, by the way, anybody who watches the channel, you have to all remember there are entire months where there haven't been a review, whether it be a technical issue, whether it be there's just not a lot of games. I don't go to events. If you go look at other channels, you'll see a lot of them aren't reviews. They're hands-on previews from Summer Game Fest. And a company doesn't want to release a game code a month or a month after Summer Game Fest, and they're like Final Fantasy or something like that. Christopher Jetzer, $10 super chat. What are you guys' thoughts on Dead Rising Remaster? Looks like Frank West looks older. So we were going to cover that, but we can start it now. So... what do we think about the rematch? I mean,
I have to look it up while you talk about it.
All right, well, I can talk about it. So it looks cleaned up graphically, tighter, higher res, that kind of thing. It's probably Ty Olsson as the voice actor. I'm assuming it's Ty Olsson, who did 4. For some people, it's hit and miss. For me, I've always liked Ty Olsson. I've always thought he was an amazing actor. Benny in Supernatural. Does some side stuff. He was one of the sheriffs in Eureka, the TV show, who came in to replace the major sheriff for a couple episodes due to a plot moment. I've always liked his coverage of the voice. I think it's old enough. It's not going to matter too much if it's close. I'm a fan, but here's what I think of a remaster / remake of that game. I just have a feeling the time limits will go away. And that will bother me a little bit, because if you want to remove them in later games, it's fine. But if it's a remaster of one, I hope they're still there. And I'm a little bit nervous they won't be. Also, some of the worst escort quests ever in number 1. I mean, dude, those guys were like, so where are the zombies? Yeah. You're like, you're getting attacked right now. They were pretty bad, man.
And not only that, but you had friendly fire.
Oh, true. Yeah, you could hit them. Right?
If you were like if you had to like melee them with, and you were wielding like a chainsaw, bad news.
Yeah, true. Bad news. Well, yeah, or maybe you just were like, this person can die. What I liked about the time limits was, and I'm a believer in this, and I know not everybody is, I distinctly do not need to get everything out of one gameplay through. Like, I don't need to be able to make every choice. I don't need to So to me, I loved the idea of balancing. Do I get that survivor? Look at your clock.
Yeah, because it was kind of like a roguelike game, because you did...
It was.
If you did,
Thank you.
If you failed, you did start over, but you kept your stats.
You kept the stat. Yeah. And so to me, the idea of that is actually... the most I'm worried about is to see what they're doing. Also,
and if it is Ty, I mean, he just has to nail the I've covered wars, line.
Right.
From Frank. Yeah.
His little one-liners in the cutscenes are some of the best. And that's the writing, right? I mean, I love the guy who did the voice acting, but I think that's very much the writing. And Ty can nail it. Ty's really good at that. Reading some long-term games people played in here. The Deagle said, yes, 45 hours played in OG Modern Warfare 2. Broderick says, I probably put in decades on Asheron's Call. Hey, I'm an Asheron's Call fan, and I know number 2, probably the same, man. Like, the amount of hours in that game are high. Third Turd says, Diablo 3 for me. It's over 2,000 hours total across multiple versions. Also, if you guys get a chance, make sure to review us on Spotify and Patron. I forgot to say that. Kel says, my played time in WoW is probably measured in years. Damn. Z-Trek says, I felt 300 hours in Skyrim was too much. J.K. Richardson, that's Big Mac. He says, I only have 21 hours in Euro Truck Simulator. I do only play it on Friday night. Oh, that's cool, though. You've got, like, your Friday night game, almost like going out with your chaps or something. That I like that. Roadkill says, why don't you say the amount of hours and saying, I have a lot of hours? Come on, man. I don't know what that means. Why don't you say the amount of hours and saying, I have a lot of hours? I don't know who he's talking to. What were you saying? Go ahead.
Just actually about Euro Truck Simulator. I looked up the other day, like the player total, the history of its player totals for concurrent players, and it's just been a continual climb since it released in like 2012. To where like a year ago it had like its biggest peak ever at like 80,000 concurrent players playing Euro Truck Simulator 2. And I think it's noteworthy because SCS Software is a company that's they've never been part of like E3 or any of the huge game conventions or anything.
Right.
But they've still like managed to cultivate this community that's been consistently growing for all these years, where players are not only still playing the game but new players are coming in all the time. And I just think that's a really like noteworthy example of that dynamic. Like, because if you look at like the curve of the player base, it's just like a continual climb.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I don't know if you saw this, Silver, but Forza 4 is being delisted due to the licenses for the cars.
Right.
And they beat their concurrent ever numbers yesterday. Ever. So after 4 years or 6 years, whatever, I don't know how long ago Forza 4 came out, yesterday or day before, they had the highest player count they've ever had. And you're just like, damn. I do like the idea of people returning to those. Somebody had said they didn't get a notification. Yeah, I didn't send notifications on this one other than the post itself. So I apologize for that. Pipeman247, $10 super chat. Been super busy last couple weeks, so just stopped by to thank you for what you do. Shadow of the Erdtree has taken over my life. Dude, I'm happy for you, man. The number of people who are playing Shadow of the Erdtree is and enjoying the hell out of it, which we'll talk about in a second, is awesome. Somebody mentioned Providence Poker. That game is awesome too. I probably have too many hours in that. Raysbury says, what do you hope to see return in Division 3? $5 super chat, and hope to see what's new. So I'll cover this quickly because I know Silver and I both played. I don't know if Johnny has played as much or of 2 as we have. But what I want to see in 2 is a fix to the end game. I want to see them get away from the incremental upgrades in the end game. I want them to have the summit moment 1 and make the summit more engaging. The descent, or the one that you go down, I think it's called the descent. That one needs to be fixed because it's a lot of stop and go gameplay that it really doesn't appeal to me. I would like to see them make a HUD that just didn't look like they were trying to copy Destiny 2 in all the worst ways. And I would like to see an offline mode. And I'm going to scratch the chance of that ever happening. But I would like to see it. I would love to see an offline mode where you just play it, not worry about being online, because they brought it offline a couple days ago and I wanted to play. I'd set time aside, couldn't play, and that pissed me off because that was like the 8 hours I had that day to play games. So anything for Division 3 for you, Silver? I mean, I know you're not
I think
always diving in.
What I would really like the most is just for them to continue what I think has been the Division's greatest strength, probably, which is just the sense of place or location.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, particularly, I think New York in the first one, at like around the holiday season.
Yeah, so good.
Like kind of frozen in time there. But Washington too as well. Like some of the levels, particularly in Division 2, like the zoo with the expansion and the
museum,
like the museum and the space museum as well. Yeah, like really memorable, really well built, really fun to fight through. So like more locations like that with like a well developed sense of place. I think that's really the key hook to get you into the game, and then from there comes the gameplay and stuff. But that is, I think, to me, like the key tenet of Division.
Yeah, being in that place and exploring it is why I'm still playing it, because I do the summit sometimes, which for people who don't know, it's just 100 levels of a skyscraper. You go up, it gets progressively harder, and you get some loot. It's okay, and I love it as a side, and I don't want it to go away. But to me, I just like running around saving people, and it's something Destiny 2 is missing. So when I'm running around Destiny 2, I'm just like, it's all bad guys all the time, just spawning in. And with Division 2, I can sort of lie to myself and be like, yeah, he got kidnapped for the 40th time. Yeah, but I'm like, I'm going to go help him again. And so that open world gameplay is great. Johnny, did you have much experience with Div 2 or 1?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I played quite a bit of Division 2. I love the game. It's one of my favorite like multiplayer games I've ever played. I think there are two things that I disliked in it. One was the inventory system, and I know they've improved it over time, but it was always a bit of a pain. You know, it's worse because I was often playing with people, and I would have this moment where I'm playing catch up, where I'm having to do this inventory management while my friends are, you know, they're going somewhere else or they're ready to go somewhere else. And I'm kind of like pressed for time and never really finding the time to fully put my inventory in order, just because it takes a lot of time, right? You pick up a lot of stuff. It's hard to sift through some of those like upgrades where you needed different collectibles and stuff like that were hard to track. So I would like an easier thing. I think also like the weapons weren't easier to determine if, you know, something was better that you just picked up.
Absolutely.
Very often. Yeah.
We'll have to play, dude, because I play all the time, and I play like you. What I do is I do 3 missions, and then I call. Yeah. I just tell everybody we're going to do inventory. Yeah, we're not doing anything else. Go back, figure shit out. But I agree with you, dude. When I have 10 UMPs and it's different, you know, and I'm sliding a cursor across them to see which one's better, and they have compare. But the compare
this one
is like
+10 here, but then this one.
Yeah. And the loadouts, the way they do loadouts is fine. It works, but they have a lot of soft cursor buttons, even on the mouse and keyboard, which just disturbs the shit out of me when I hit tab and it's like just to switch something. I'm like, what, dude? What do you? Why is the inventory like this? What? So there's a lot of stuff I would like to see, and I think that like Silver said, the sense of place is one of the best in the business when it comes to a service game.
The other thing that was a pet peeve of mine is the holograms. There's something about holograms in games, just in general, that I despise. There's nothing less engaging than like a radio-y voice so it's always shit audio, right? You can barely make out what people are saying. It's like people aren't moving because it's a frozen picture of a hologram of something that happened. None of it ever felt meaningful to me, or maybe I just didn't care enough. You know, like the other stuff,
the hologram reconstructions of the locations and stuff, like the investigations.
Yeah, and I was impacted by other things like the world building, the places, and like you know, some of the people, but the holograms just never never worked.
Okay, if we
like
did play together, we would have to
not.
figure out how to do it then, because I love those, and I listen to each one and stand there listening. So if
No,
we
I
decide
don't
to
mind
play,
sitting through them. I just don't think they're good. It's fine. It's just
it's like anything in the past that's an audio recreation, even if it's a little visual recreation. It's like if you're in the middle of a gun battle,
just sitting there listening to this. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I can feel that. Damage code $5 super chat. Yo, I'm a little late and try to catch every podcast. Have you guys seen the new trailer for Streets of Rogue 2? The first one was awesome. I have not seen that one. Have you guys seen it?
No.
Yeah, haven't seen that one yet. There's been a lot of trailers that have come out in the last couple weeks that I just really haven't had a chance to jump into or check out. And then trailers lately have been, there's been a lot of issue where I look at the trailer and it might be their new editing style that we're seeing from some of these trailers, but an inordinate amount of cutscene and then a little bit of gameplay, and then it's hard sometimes to go, is that the gameplay, or is that a rendering of their expected gameplay? I'm sure this game isn't like that. I'm just talking about all trailers combined. But no, I haven't had a chance. Roadkilla says, hit the like button. Yes, please do. Nyack, 449. I don't know the number for that. I don't know that thing, but thank you very much for the super chat. I don't know the amount. Somebody will have to tell me what that amount is. And then Frankie Donuts, $5 super chat. My fave is cracking open a supply closet. Yeah, feels good. They got good sounds. That would be one thing in Division. It's got that click. It's got that. It's got something very tangible to the sound effects. Yeah, those are good.
So speaking of trailers, Space Marine 2, I think, actually nailed their gameplay presentation. For the game.
Which did?
They did. Space Marine 2.
This was like 3 weeks ago.
No,
it like 2 weeks?
Oh, is there
2 weeks, I think, or like a week and a half ago.
I think there was even a new one here in the last couple days, but it felt a little like it was the same stuff. I haven't really got to jump in and see it all, but yeah, they've done a good job. I think people just want to play Space Marine 2. Like, I think we're all pretty under the impression that it looks like, what we want to see. Brad, who is a patron for 5 years, says, Brad, what did you think of the Veilguard now that we have more data? He's talking about Dragon Age. I saw the character creator. I've read a bunch of stuff. I'm intrigued. That'll be the highest level of excitement from me. Intrigued. Anything else from Veilguard you guys have seen? That's the Dragon Age.
Nothing recent.
Yeah. It's coming out this year.
I'm trying not to hear too much about it because I do want to go in a little blind. And I think I am already intrigued by it. So I am going to get into it when it eventually releases. So I'm trying to sort of keep semi-blind on it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm watching. I would say I'm like you in that I'll watch the bits that really intrigue me, but for the most part, I just, since it's coming out this year, if it was longer, I probably wouldn't. I would probably investigate even more, but because it's this year, supposedly, it's like I'm just sort of sitting back going like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to let this go and sort of look at little bits. And from what I've seen, it looks interesting, but who knows, man? I mean, they've got a lot of weirdness in this one that's nothing like Dragon Age Origins or 2 or Inquisition.
Yeah, I mean,
it's its own thing.
I think we talked about, it seems like a pretty wild tonal shift. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's really its own thing. And so it could turn out to be like, oh my God, thank God it's its own thing. Or people going,
yeah.
They haven't really had a game other than Origins. I think most people feel this way. I think Origins rests a little bit of its popularity just on the Origins, and the rest of the game wasn't as lofty as people remember, but that's beside the point. I do think that there is no one game they're going against either, because Inquisition had some good things and some bad things. 2 had a couple good things, not many, but two had some good things.
I liked Inquisition quite a bit.
I liked Inquisition more than 2.
Oh no, unquestionably, me too.
Okay. Just making sure
I was not all that fond of 2.
Yeah. Nyack 449, the same thing. Squiggles, we'll call them. When do you guys think Forza Horizon 6 will be announced, and where do you think it will be set? I want it very badly to be in Japan. Yeah, I think Japan's a good.
Yeah, Japan could definitely be a solid location.
I feel like Japan's the way it should. Like, it's their get out of jail free card. It's been a while. I just think now would be the time to say, let's do Japan. and go ahead and
I'm kind of nervous it would be like
fix
Dubai.
a couple things. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Somewhere like
I
that
don't
we
know.
just nobody expects. Yeah, Toledo, Oregon. Just somewhere that you're like, whoa, what the hell? I don't remember the exact locations of every single one of them either, but I know that only 3. What are we on now? 5? Yeah, we're on 5. Forza Horizon 5, I think. So 3 of them I've liked their locations, and 2 I've thought were okay. And then the DLC for 4 or 5, the snowy one, Snowy Peaks or Mountains and Snow, whatever the fuck it was called. I really like that DLC location. The locations have to speak to me. You know, they
France
have to
could
like.
also be really cool, like particularly
yeah.
like southern France, like the Riviera.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not just Japan, right? Like there are many places you could post that, especially because their worlds are
Or Italy,
massive.
like the Amalfi Coast or something. Yeah. Also.
Let's see. Next up, Jor Knock 50 Super Chat. Just won a game of League of Legends after a 5-loss streak. Now it's time to order some fucking food. Good game. Congratulations for winning. That's a celebration right there. Whenever anybody feels that celebratory that they have to eat right afterwards. Let's see. What else do we have? Sister Mister says, never change, man. That is it. Peace out. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. We won't. Or we will. Tomorrow, I'm going to open up a science channel. That's all I'm going to do is cover science. Moving on from there, let's talk about Erdtree. So Erdtree, they patched it so everybody can be as good as journalists, as one of the headlines says, which cracked me up, by the way. But so that it's come out. It's been, talked about with the difficulty thing. There's been people saying get good, people saying, it just didn't feel right. It's been patched. How did you feel about the difficulty, Johnny?
I mean, for someone who is, I do okay at the games and I beat them, but I'm not like amazing. I wouldn't say I'm like gifted by any means on those games. I would say, yeah, it's hard, and it forces you, in my opinion, to figure out whatever you can use in your favor, because enemies deal a lot of damage compared to the base game, and that's also intentional because you can pick up these little buffs around the world to become stronger, right, to resist damage and deal more damage yourself. So it incentivizes you to go out and explore those and then come back to the boss once you've done that, because you're going to be noticeably stronger. I like how they show it very clearly in your stats, how you're getting tankier by picking up those buffs. You can see your damage negation for different types going up, and it's marked as only affecting the DLC area, which is pretty cool. I like the way that works, and I like that it actually forces you to kind of figure out how can I get some more damage negation. The base game didn't really force me to have to dig in and look at like the talismans and stuff, because you just end up being very strong as you level up naturally. But with this one, I would say the bosses seem to have less openings compared to the first one, and they also deal a lot of damage. That's the thing. So it did force me to, like I say, figure out some things, which I think is cool. It's in a way, it's forcing me to engage with the game more than I did initially, which was rewarding. And overall, like, the designs are amazing visually. It's very enjoyable to fight them. There have been a couple that were a little bit BS, with kind of, what would you say, like summoning extra people and having tons of projectiles that are coming at you that feel a little bit annoying. But for the most part, they've been like pretty straight up fights where you just have to get into the details, figure out what the attacks are, when is the end of a combo, right? And you just have to understand a lot of these bosses don't have a ton of openings. In the original game, some bosses you can just they do one attack, you do another. In a way, you're almost like one for you, one for me,
tit for tat kind of thing.
Okay, tit for tat. But in the DLC, a lot of times I found the bosses have very long combos, so you have to wait for them to do their whole thing, and then you go in and you do boop, one,
Yeah.
1 or 2 hits, and then you're out again.
Yeah,
that's kind of how it's been for me.
That's always been the biggest thing in FromSoftware games. Don't get greedy.
Don't get greedy.
Just the 1 or 2. Yeah.
But honestly, every single DLC has been hard as balls for me. These games like DS3, the base game was a cakewalk compared to the DLC, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure it was the same with the others as well. So I'm pretty used to, they want to push you to kind of the next level in the DLC, and they're going to give you challenges. And so far it's felt fair. I don't have much criticisms, but you have to be willing to, like I say, get into the details, figure out fights, look at your loadouts, right, and make sure you're well prepared and all that.
I think also people are coming into it. It's an extra year out than I think a lot of us expected. If it had been last year, people would have had a little bit more muscle memory. Some people be still playing it. I saw a lot of people who were getting ready a week prior. And a week isn't really a long time for a DLC from a FromSoft game. But the other thing to remember is this is a game that isn't like all other FromSoft games. In fact, it's dramatically different. And so the idea of saying, I've heard people be like, oh, you should just have known, blah, blah, blah. Well, this might be their first FromSoft game. So they don't just know. There's no magical DNA memory.
Particularly Elden Ring.
Particularly Elden Ring. There's not some magical thing that's going to let everybody know the data sitting in your closet, typing away on your keyboard warrior. It's something that they have sort of made it clear. They said this is going to be more difficult than, or it's going to be very difficult even for people who've come back. They did, as Johnny said, one of the things I felt was that the openings are not as there as maybe you might expect. Even in their other DLCs, the one thing I did take away is that the openings were not as there as the other DLCs, even the hard ones were. So that feels different. But I think a lot of it's just not recency bias, but coming back to a game that's also going to be that difficult. If it had been last year, like I said, I think there probably would have been other games people were playing, but it'd be 1 year closer. This is such a big DLC, and it took that extra year to come out, and it's just like, okay. A lot of people jumping in thinking, I did well on Elden Ring. I can do well on the DLC, and it's like,
yep,
maybe not. But I think they did a pretty okay job. They probably could have made it a little clearer, but they did a pretty good job. I saw interviews where they're like, this is going to be hard. But they do have a different community now. That's the one thing that is on them. They have a different community than they've ever had before. This is a community, many of them more casual gamers, I guess is what you would say. And it is on them to make sure that they go out of their way to explain it or go out of their way to react to their own community. Like, oh yes, this is super popular with a huge group of people that aren't just FromSoft fans. We need to make sure that we onboard them in a way that's informative, both in the fiction as well as like in the mechanics and how you see them. And I didn't see that as much in this DLC. I don't feel like there was as much onboarding to where people could understand if they hadn't played a bunch of FromSoft games. I had just read the interviews, and when they say it's going to be super difficult, my assumption is most devs, when they say that, I'm like, I don't know if it will be. This one in particular is, it's one of those things. Yeah. But they patched it to fix it. And they said that they patched it up so that the first half is a little bit more maybe rampy correctly. I think maybe this is like mid to end game DLC that feels almost like it should have been in the game day one. I don't mean should as if they did something wrong. I mean the difficulty curve feels in there to where you were good, you were right at your good part, where you understand everything. But when people jump back into it, it's like juk, and
yep.
I think it sounds like they sort of made it so instead of going straight up, if you jump off into this DLC, it meanders a little bit more and then starts to ramp up. I think that's fine. Give people 1 or 2 bosses that maybe don't kill you in one hit, or or that that have a little bit of a more thought process.
I like that you said that. That would be my one criticism, is that there isn't a ton. Well, you can go many places, so it is very open. You can explore a bunch, even in the very first area. But it's kind of like everywhere you go, there's a clapper. And by clapper, I mean like a strong boss. Like even you go into a tiny Gale. Is it pronounced that way? Jail. And there's like, a stat checking dude that will literally one-shot you if you don't have good damage negation, starting off, because you start off, you don't have any of those buffs yet.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I guess I'll come back here. And then you go somewhere else, you get smoked there. It's like, okay, let me put down another marker on the map where I got smoked for me to come back to. And it is, I agree with you, it is in the beginning hard to get, to kind of get
acclimatized
on your feet.
Yeah.
Acclimatized to it. I did find that once I got past a couple, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm full speed. I've been I'm now primed. I'm once again the guy who beat, millennia, because it's like your skill level, you prime it to a certain point and then you don't play the game for 2 years, like you said, and it goes down a lot, right? Until you can regain it in a way. So I would like an easing into it thing in the DLC. But at the same time, those are the people who put like Margit as first boss, which I thought was way harder than really any of the next bosses. You compare Margit to the next 2-3 bosses, and it was actually just a harder boss, in my opinion. So I don't fault them, and the fact that the bosses are hard also make them memorable, because I can tell you right now that I'm stronger, I beat a boss on my second try, like a big rhino looking thing, and I already forgot about it because it only took me 2 tries.
Yeah.
But I probably will remember for a pretty long time, the overgrown cat that kicked my ass for 15 tries.
Yeah. I think the other thing when it comes to this branching out that FromSoft is doing, because of the success of Elden Ring, any game that gets major success has to look at who they're getting in, because you want them to be continual fans. I think what I noticed in Elden Ring's DLC so far, I would agree with Johnny that some are memorable, but I actually don't believe that any of them so far have been as memorable as any of the normal bosses in Elden Ring. Does that make sense? As in, I've defeated them and they might have been hard or different, but I haven't had the sense of awe ever in this DLC that I did have in the original. I don't know if that's a time split. I don't know if it's the design. I find the designs a little expected, I guess. I haven't seen a boss yet that I was like, oh, this is the dragon moment, when the dragon crashed into me in the middle of Elden Ring or something like that, where I saw a boss and I was like, what? In fact, it's just sort of been like, oh, here's a guy with a weapon. Here's a dude doing this. Here's a guy with this. That to me is probably just the way it's going to be, because it's not like an Asian inspired world where you're going to see completely different guys. It's like, it is still Elden Ring, even if it is this other world kind of thing.
I would agree for the most part. I saw a couple so far that have been
like memorable cool artistically to you.
Artistically, okay. But it's also, we've seen so much, like in the original game, that it's hard to surprise us, right? And of course, a lot of stuff will be derivative and iterations on older designs and things like that.
Yeah. And what's weird is most memorable bosses for me in other games aren't even there's usually 2 types: creative, artistic, awesome, right, but almost never battle awesome, or battle awesome, but almost never artistically awesome. There's like Butterfly Lady or whatever, where I'm like, I didn't like her look or anything, but she was super hard for me. And I remember that fight. There's like Surge, the boss, fucking robot boss guy with the spider like mech, that I was like, I don't even like the design, but the guy is difficult as shit. So I actually remember him more than I almost remember anybody else in that game. Not artistically and not in a, wow, this is epic and awesome feeling, but like, my God, this is hard. And it's not negative. It's just like, I remember them for different reasons. Christopher says, $10 ship. ACG, do you think that's because the camera can be difficult to track some of the bosses, so it's hard to remember the attacks because everything is so fast? Hope that makes sense. No, it does make sense. FromSoft's biggest boss is their camera.
Yes.
FromSoft's own weakness, own flashing point is their camera. It's like Ghost of Tsushima. The biggest problem I had, other than the stance changing, which was the camera in tents in Ghost. You go into a tent and it'd be like, and the same. I feel that
a big part of that is the lock-on system.
Yeah,
you know that I really feel like the lock-on is a little bit of a noob trap.
Where it feels like it should be easier, but it makes it more difficult almost. Yeah, agreed.
But in a weird way, if you're someone who's using lock-on because, you know, you're just not very good and you're struggling and you want help, actually the lock-on will actively screw you.
Agreed.
Many times.
Especially
if the center of mass, Silver, like, isn't it? Like if the center of mass is high up and you're up against an enemy, the camera will just...
Yeah.
If it's a large enemy in particular.
It's literally unusable in those cases.
Yeah, and I think that's on them. There's no excuse for it. That is something that they need to fix and work on, and they haven't fixed it yet. That is a FromSoft weakness.
One of the worst bosses, I think, with the camera in Elden Ring was the like the kind of snake like rotten tree. I forget what it's called. It's called like rotten tree beast or something. That's kind of almost like a kind of snake thing. Or whatever that like it thrashed all over the place. Like that thing, fighting the camera with that thing was really annoying. Like the camera was a major opponent of fighting that thing.
And we have that in almost any game where there's third and first person. I have the same issue. The camera is almost always never good for both. It's usually good for one. And then you get into the other one, you're like, oh man. Lock on in particular, for a lot of people, feels like this will help me move. It'll help me strafe. It'll help me not lose vision of all of the stuff going on. And it does. But as Johnny was saying, what it can also do is slightly adjust. If you're locked on, your attacks will go a certain way. And sometimes what you'll find out without lock on is you can hit an enemy's hitbox slightly to the left or right, which might make leaping a little bit more easy. So there's this odd thing that it doesn't have a great interplay. That's just their issue. I mean, they definitely have it. You know, I know people think FromSoft is perfect, and I get it. They're not at all. They have a multitude of problems they need to fix. One of the major ones would be camera. The other would be their performance issues that they've had pretty notoriously. But I think still, when you look at it, it's sold really well. We're getting to the sales part, which I'm getting out of the critique and success part, because sales don't always mean good. But what I'm saying is it sold really well. People seem to like it. People want to play it despite if they're having difficulty issues. And the people who don't feel those difficulty issues are there seem to be enjoying it. Really haven't heard anybody say it's mediocre or poor. It's either been
I think
okay or great. That's what I've heard, at least.
I think the camera at this point, though, is a design choice from FromSoft.
You are no way.
No.
Okay, give me why you think that camera would be a design choice.
I think it's a design choice in the same way it's a design choice that your attacks will bonk off the wall, but the enemy's attacks will not.
So you think it's in the same same
yes,
like, this is our decision.
Which sucks, by the way. And you have to adapt to it, because it's part of the difficulty that we create for
But you know what I discovered?
Challenges that you have to overcome for playing the game.
Gotcha.
Because I've been using a flail quite a bit, so it has a chain. It doesn't bounce off walls the way swords do, which is cool. So I can actually get my attacks off with the flail. Yeah.
It
is, like you said, a choice.
I would say in no way, shape, or form do I think their choice is to be that clunky. I do. If it is,
I very much agree with you. But I think it is. I just have a feeling it is that way, and I feel like there's a certain segment of the FromSoft fan base that appreciates it. I think
there's a segment of FromSoft game fans that enjoy, getting their nuts smashed, for sure.
Oh yeah,
like no matter what, right? But I think that what is funny is a lot of people would just say, "Don't use a lock on," and it's like that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is if you do. I would also say the reason why I don't think it's a design choice is because even when the camera is not locked on, the camera is still pretty bad. Now, there's a couple things that could fix it. One is dissolving. I would love to see more games do this. We're still not seeing this, guys. And this, by the way, could be a design choice for cheating. But you know how in a lot of games you'll play a third-person game and you turn and the background dissolves so you can still see your character? Something like Rogue Trader did not do. And that was a turn-based, and it was still difficult as fuck to play because you couldn't see your guy because they just had the world's shittiest camera. Those kind of things probably are also a decision that they make when they look at like, okay, well, we've got this problem. What do we do? We've got this problem. I also don't want it to, you know, it's not like any third-person game has a perfect camera either. But
no,
most third-person games are not striving for this level of difficulty. And I'll just put my foot down and say, if it is a design choice, whoever's designing that part is not very good. And they have a lot of work to do because there are better games of that ilk that do have better cameras that could still create the same difficulty. And it's okay to say, I know nobody wants to talk about talent. That's typical right now. Nobody wants to be like, oh, you know, somebody needs to work on something. I will say that. I firmly believe if that's their choice, they have some work to do professionally with their design team to figure out a way to make that choice still resonate with both groups. Also, it is interesting to me that they haven't, or that companies haven't done this. If you do the lock-on, you get less experience. Or if you, I've thought about this before. I was talking about this with a friend going, how would you play the game? Let's say, what if you did less damage with your lock-on? Which I think in a way you can do this in Elden Ring. This is what I was getting to earlier, where if you don't use lock-on, you can hit them in certain ways. What would you guys think of a game where the lock-on was the way we assume lock-ons would work, but you got less experience for killing the enemy, or you got, or you did less damage? Because sometimes I've thought that might be, it's a lot of design. I mean, that would take somebody a long time to get right. But I sort of like the idea that, let's say if a new person comes in and they use unlock on flying enemies, for instance, I think we can all agree flying enemies in these games usually suck balls because you end up going, you know, if you are trying to look or lock on. But
like
I was
swatting flies.
Right. I was wondering about that, like, because let's say you do less damage, it would require more arrows in a game that has arrows. So you'd have to worry about crafting, but that would let the person who wanted to use the lock on use the crafting system, engage in that, get less damage done, but maybe not be on the fucking edge of a cliff and look themselves to death, which I've done many times in those games. I'm just sort of talking out of pocket here, wondering if like maybe in the future we might get a game that looks at that, because I don't know if you guys remember, Division 2 has modifiers. You get 25 extra difficulty if you turn Ragers on, which is where if you kill a guy next to another guy, they overcharge. And I like those kind of ideas. Those kind of ideas that are like, we're not going to change the base like game as much, but we're going to change this. I guess in a way you could say that they have modifiers already with alchemy in that game and spells. You know, you already do have a great deal of modifiers in that way. But yeah, I mean, that's just my personal pet peeve. You guys know it. I'm anti-camera fuckery in games, so I'm just going to be hard on the camera in this one.
The idea that you have to, you know, hold down B in this case to run around, but you simultaneously have to control the camera. So what a lot of people end up doing is this kind of like claw grip, right? Where like you're holding down and you're moving. It's very unnatural. I've had like an evolution where I use the back pedal. And that's holding B for me. So now I can hold that and move the camera around, which is really nice. And when I want to dodge, then I will use the actual button because that's where muscle memory is.
Chris said, I think, this is Chris Jetzer, he says, I think Lords of the Shadow had a good lock-on system and camera, but could be remembering wrong. Chris, do you mean the new one?
Lords of Shadow?
Isn't that the Castlevania one? Isn't it called Castlevania Lords of Shadow? I feel like that is what he's talking about. That's why I was asking if it's the new one. That's not new, but that's Fallen. Somebody said Fallen. All right. Well, I don't know which one you guys are talking about. There is Lords of the Fallen,
but there is also Lords of Shadow Castlevania. So
yeah, that's why I'm wondering. Oh, so now we're thinking it's Lords of the Fallen he's talking about, not Castlevania.
Just because
Lords of Shadow. Okay.
we were talking about souls.
Jor767, knock 550. ACG, would you ever start streaming on Twitch, the podcast? ? Yeah, we've actually discussed doing that. That's just on me. Streaming to two places is quite difficult to sort of make sure that your tech issues are sorted out. And then you also have to worry about two different chats. And I've discussed this many times, but two different chats is a little odd because somebody somewhere is always going to feel like you're ignoring them. But we will be trying that. Benjamin says, you guys should really look how the devs for Armored Core 4 held the controller. Why would I care about how Armored Core devs held a controller?
What is it some weird like...
Probably like this or something. I don't know.
Arachnid.
Like somebody begging for milk.
Yeah.
What when it comes to Lords of the Fallen, anything, or sorry, now I'm stuck on it. God damn it. When it comes to Erdtree, yeah, I mean it looks like
one
for
really
the most
cool
part,
thing too, by the way,
well, which is great.
I found some cool weapons in it. There, I found one that has like a blink strike that's amazing. You kind of like turn into lightning, and
damn,
like,
really
phase into the enemy at gap close, and you do a big attack. Very cool. There's a new incantation that's also very good for thunder, and that's what I've been running. So it was really cool to see. And yeah, they got some amazing weapons, man, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's one of the best things. Somebody is going to make an app to put all the chats in one place. I think they already did. I think you can use Restream for that, but it's one more middle ground between us and them, which is one more issue between us and them.
It is
one more tech issue. Fighting Dog says, stay on YouTube. I'm not leaving YouTube. What's happening? You guys, I'm not leaving YouTube. What? They were asking if I was also going to stream there. Benjamin says, oh, held basically backwards or upside down. It looks jarring, but people who played the game said seems about right. Oh, gotcha. I haven't done Armored Core 4. Aren't we on 6 now for Armored Core?
Yes.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one. I hold my controller like any grown man. Thumbs on the thumbsticks, but I got to tell you that I would love to see some growth in the ergonomics of those things, because either they're, I don't know if you like symmetrical or you like offset, you have both types. You've got this big centerpiece that is not used. And Sony tried to say, oh, hey, touch is going to be the thing, which, yeah, it is. You touch it to hit a button. It's the exact same fucking thing. But there's something in that centerpiece, right? There's some space there to do some things. I love the back bumpers. I think we can, I have never seen anybody say they don't like the back buttons or back bumpers. I love the idea of that. I think more of those could be useful. I also feel like at times when you hold the thumbsticks for long periods of time, either offset or even, they're not always comfortable over the longest period of time. You can obviously see the wear on an edge of the thumbstick, which indicates you're not actually resting in the normal way because you are edging that one side. You know how we see these joysticks where you can take out the thumb pads?
Yep.
I would love to be able to rock them by 15 degrees. So when my hand so instead of crunching my hands like this, I could rest my hands sort of in the way, but I don't know if up and down, left and right
angled.
work so well. Yeah. I would just, we're seeing so many different adjustments and stuff like that. I love the idea of being able to sort of figure out how controllers can jump into the future. Cause I feel like controllers have a lot of wasted space. I mean, if you look at a controller, just being on it, I got the lime green Miami Vice version.
Nice.
But look at the center, man. Like those are hard to reach anyway, or not hard, but they're not in the line.
There's not a lot going on. It's still for the Xbox. It's still
I'm still a lover of the idea of ABC. I know most people think that's one other thumb button. I get it. I totally understand where people are coming from. I just grew up on that. But I just feel like there's a lot of space there that could be used for other things, even if it meant, I don't know, like making gamepads must be hard because they're the same fucking gamepad for the last 25 years.
Because the thing is, too, like we only have so many fingers. So you could say, well, let's put a bunch of buttons there.
That's why
but then
need to be on the back more.
Right. Yeah. And it works pretty well.
Yeah, I think the back bumpers are great. They feel good.
They're pretty good.
Sometimes
I think, man, I would just love like a humongous control, because I have like long fingers. So if
you find your fingers doing what mine do, where they're like against each other.
Yeah, because they're a bit like a claw on this thing. I would love like a humongous controller. Just get
better
my hands
triggers
around
would be great. Better triggers. I don't, I'm not Xbox or PlayStation in the trigger. I know that some people like either one. I don't care about fancy pullback or pushback or any. I'm talking about the mechanism itself. I've always felt is the weak point.
The tactile thing.
Yeah, like they just don't feel good yet. And I love the idea that some gamepads you can lock them so that they're tap, tap, tap. Like if you do a shooter, there's no, unless you're doing like a SIG where, or an Steyr AUG, sorry, where if you pull it all the way back, it's full auto and half, it's just semi. I love the idea of that, but in a shooter, usually doesn't portray itself very well. I would like to see them do some switches, but they're at that $50 to $60 cost range. They probably have that pretty optimized. There's probably
I would love to have some tactile feel, almost like a mechanical keyboard, where you can kind of like feel the switch.
Agreed. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You mean that?
Yeah, because even in the Elite, there isn't anything. It's kind of like.
Wait. You're doing Elden Ring with a gamepad on the PC?
Yeah.
Not keyboard. How do you play your Elden Ring, your FromSoft game Silver? You using mouse and keyboard, or you using gamepad as well?
A gamepad.
Interesting.
Wait, do you do keyboard? Mouse keyboard?
I would say for the most part on PC slotted ones, I do. Yeah. You know why? Because I hate the camera, like I've made clear.
Yeah,
and so spinning around with a keyboard and mouse is easier than spinning
faster,
around, waiting for that thing to go,
But I always found the controls so awkward with mouse and keyboard. Yeah.
A lot of stuff you can do. Well, I will tell you this. Do you know what I do, Johnny? I lock myself into the mentality of playing the keyboard as if it's only got the same buttons as the gamepad at first. So 8 to 10 buttons. That's my 8 or 10 that I use on the gamepad or on the mouse and keyboard. And then once I get better, I start looking. But like I don't use 7, 8, or 9 because those no fingers are close to those. Like to me, that makes no sense.
Absolutely.
So weirdly enough, when I'm playing, do you guys have numpads on the side of your keyboards?
Yeah.
So let me tell you a little magic. And I don't know if you'll agree. There's 2 things you can do that I've done. First is you buy one of these for $9, which is 3 keys, and you put them beside the numpad and you hit them with your thumb on the mouse. That is awesome. But I've been doing it. I don't have mine plugged in. I actually do the plus, minus, and enter keys as something else. So when I'm playing the game, I can just use my thumb and tap the enter button. And like, so instead of having a mouse button be heal or a button on my left and right, when I'm running around, I don't want to hit a heal button or grenade all the time. So what I do is I have the enter and plus keys bound as something else. So I could, because I'm pretty close to my numpad. Not, I mean, I don't hit it, but I'm close enough that if I need to, I can go tap. Yeah.
So you have your mouse in your hand and then you're tapping on the numpad.
Yeah, I never have it on something I need to do right away. But if it even inventory or something.
Okay.
And like map. So if you look at the way your hands are, M is way over here. So to me, my map will be the plus sign. So I can be playing and go pop and hit the mouse. Now, I'm not saying that that's some perfect way. It's just for me as I've played, I'm always like, well, I've got these buttons on the mouse, but there's sometimes
I would never have thought.
Sometimes they're not comfortable. Yeah. So I've been doing that, and it's fucking been phenomenal for the buttons that are in this dead zone of your keyboard, like your U, I, O, P, J, K, L, N, and M, where I don't want to crink my thumb over and maybe I'm moving at the time and I want to hit that button. And usually it depends on the game. Is there something with the game that like I need a button that's mid speed, not super fast to hit, but I don't want to like move my hands away. It works quite well. These are awesome too.
The arrow keys, like that's the active part.
Do you use the arrow keys?
Yeah.
Yeah, the arrow keys to me, I like to use.
Insert, home, in, page up, page down, delete stuff. Those are keys I use for like other functions as well.
I hope I don't unplug shit. I have replaced my black keys with white ones on buttons I hit a lot. So if I hit a lot of keys on a certain game, I will switch it out. Let me make sure I didn't just hit a button there. Can we all say something, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay, because my button, it said, we can't hear you. But anyway, so I've replaced all the keys on my keyboard that I hit a lot with different colored keys. And that way, like at night, I don't have to have the light on. I can just see the difference between the white and black from the monitor. Those always work. But
Yep.
WASD, ever heard of it? WASD is awesome. I still use that. I know one of my friends plays WASD, but uses the keyboard keys still, the old style, up, down, left, right for his movement. And I'm like, God damn, son. That'd be uncomfortable as hell. I don't know.
Yeah, but I've used the arrow keys since I first played Blackstone, way back in the 90s on a PC. I just found it a lot easier than WASD because with WASD you have all the other keys nearby.
Yep, you definitely do.
The arrow keys, you have them isolated.
That's the other thing with
it. And it also just makes sense to have used the arrow keys to me because it's left, up, down.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, onomatopoeia of buttons. Also, these things you can put on the left side too, so you can have them near your control keys and stuff if you want on the left, which is always nice. And it's super cheap compared to buying one of those big ass fucking, crazy ass keyboards. I've seen people with like the 9 macro, two lines of extra keys, and by that point I'm already like I don't even hit F5 very often. I'm not hitting F14. Moving on from Elden Ring, is that all we've got for Elden Ring?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. It's pretty good. It's pretty great.
Next up is CDPR has stated that their new Boston studios means Cyberpunk 2 will be more authentically American.
America. I mean, they do, to be fair, in their defense, they do have a lot of, like, pretty much everybody in the studio seems to be heavy European, with like heavy European backgrounds and everything. So,
yeah, I guess my question would be though, Johnny, for a Cyberpunk game, what are you getting from being in Chicago or being Boston? What are you getting there for a Cyberpunk game that makes you more authentically American? Because doesn't that mean I need to move to Japan if I wanted to do a Japanese game, or I needed to move to? I don't know what you're getting from that.
Can't write fiction about a different.
Well, I mean, you are. Yeah, I mean, you are getting that experience. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's going to provide a different perspective. Like you're going to get a different perspective from a writer who's disabled and knows that experience.
Oh, they're not saying that though.
Who hasn't been?
I don't think they're saying that. I don't think they're saying they're hiring all people from Boston. I read it as they're moving a studio that studio will be people that work for them currently. If that I see what you're saying, Silver, and that's what I thought originally. But now remember, this is just an article, so I'm not saying they're right or wrong. What I took from the article was just that they've got the studio in Boston, but it's still the same people they've already said were working on Cyberpunk in the first place.
Oh.
So it's not like they're going to Boston to hire people. It's that it's the people who were working on Cyberpunk would now be working in Boston. And I was like,
yeah, that would seem incredibly counterintuitive.
That would seem.
Also that they would have to, not only that, but that those developers would then have to move to an entirely different country with an entirely different like healthcare system and everything.
Relocating the studio will magically like change people's.
Yeah. I mean, also, we don't know how many people they put on it. And like I said, I'm sure it'll be a mix. I'm sure they'll hire people locally. Like that's, you just do that just because you're building up a studio. But that was sort of why I brought this up, because it was such a weird thing to read, be like authentically. But by the way, I don't have an issue with that. If they want to base it there and they want to use walk around, get the feel of the city in the future, I was sort of taking the piss at the startings, but that kind of stuff for sure works. But I was just laughing at authentically American because I love Boston. If you say authentically American, you have to realize how big America is. You're like, I don't think any one place is authentically.
It does also sound a little tongue in cheek.
It does sound a little tongue in cheek. It could have been. It could have been. I'm excited for it regardless. To me, Cyberpunk is done. The ire I have towards that game and those situations will always exist, but they'll have nothing to do with this one. And I'm hoping all the best. I want to. Good side.
The immediate thought I get when somebody uses that term, like authentically American, is like the local like diner in like a European country, like American diner. that has like all the like Americana
stuff on the wall,
iconography and stuff. Yeah,
they have the same like seats, right?
The jukebox and stuff. Yeah,
but the guy who comes up to you, it has a thick Slavic accent, and you're like,
yeah,
I'm not 100% sure this
or Swedish, yeah,
or Swedish, yeah. You're like, dude, what? Wait, what? I love the idea of it though. I'm also, I'm happy that they've figured out their shit. They got a new engine. They've discussed all the problems. They've sort of, stopped with pretending that what happened was what was supposed to happen. They're like looking in the future. That's the way I want them to do it. I'm pretty excited to see what they can do with an engine that is much more capable narratively. Something that they bitched about openly. PC Gamer did that podcast where they had the narrative writer come in, and he was like, they thought they could do something and found out very early, oh man, we can't do like a tenth of what we want to do with this engine. So having a new engine and be able to do what we want narratively. I was listening to Ken Levine's discussion is 10 years ago. He was talking about narrative, and he was talking about let me say this because I don't want to speak for him, but I took some notes on Ken's discussion, and he calls this when a game overreacts to you on radical recognition, meaning when the game overtly makes sure that it's seeing what you're doing. And I think that Cyberpunk was exactly the opposite. And so I'm hoping for something a little closer, not all the time, but that reaction. He was actually bringing up a good point. He was saying to him the radical reaction was around Shadow of Mordor and the Nemesis system in particular. He was talking about how he felt like, and he admitted openly, he's like, yeah, there's been some issues, but he liked the idea of this game that reacted directly to what you did. Also, very depressing talk, because he also mentioned, I don't know why more companies haven't done the Nemesis system. And it was apparently prior to the IP, them locking that down. I was like, oh, that hurts because even developers are like, dude, we want this. Anything for Cyberpunk other than it's going to be authentically Bostonian? Any do
you think you have to be because we see writers, they write about cultures that they're not a part of, and they just research, right? They talk to people from those places. Do you think like to do an amazing game or whatever media, do you have to have people from that, or can you simply research it and have it be better for that?
Go ahead.
I think you can definitely get away with just researching it, though that does take a lot of work. I don't think you necessarily have to be. I don't think you necessarily have to have the experience of being a disabled person to write about people with disabilities, or to be a woman to write a female character, or to be a man to write a male character. I don't think you necessarily have to belong to that identity, or however you want to term it. But I think certainly bringing in people who are part of that identity does help you bring perspective.
Yeah.
And I think certainly that is likely to be part of the research that you're going to do. And I think you do need to approach it with a certain level of mind and a certain open mind and a level of respect. But it's certainly possible to do it without being part of it.
I think also there's no other way that I can think off the top of my head to do this comparison other than what I'm going to say. But when you say, oh, we've hired this person from that place, therefore we know everything, it's sort of like saying my token friend who's a different race means I'm not a racist. There's a weird thought process of one person, because that person, just like I am not,
doesn't represent the entire culture Oregon, or the entire identity.
Yeah. But what it does do, as Silver pointed out, is it does bring in some knowledge of those, like, what does this sound like? Is this sound right?
Yeah, what is this local custom or whatever that we might not have encountered otherwise?
And do you guys know what missed really this? Good. I just want to point out one game that missed this was Mirage. Mirage did do that, and Ubisoft is quite well known for doing okay on this, but they didn't in Mirage. I've been talking to multiple people on our podcast who speak Arabic and there's different dialects, but they were saying some of the stuff, what the characters say is just gibberish. It's almost like, I guess you could say old slang almost. And if you get the guy who comes in who's 40 talking to the 18-year-old and what he says might be the same words, but because the entire meaning has changed, because everything has changed, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing, or it doesn't make sense anymore at all in that context. So bringing one in, I think, is a bad idea, or not a bad idea, sorry, but is not nearly as powerful as it sounds. I think, I think in all honesty, study is the best. True study. I mean, we diss on Ubisoft for a bunch of stuff, but they send a bunch of people, and then those bunch of people go and take a bunch of data and bring it back versus one who maybe you say is the expert. We've seen this with TV shows. They'll be like, oh, we got a scientist to help us with our TV show. And you'll see Kyle Hill do a 2-hour video where he just deballs all the science. And you're like, well, if they brought a scientist in and you find out that somehow the writing of the show went slightly different to what that original expert knew, and so it sounded good to them, but the people who really do know that thing are like, that doesn't make any sense. I also think it's okay because it's a game. None of them are realistic too much. So when I hear, like, if I don't like the thing for Mirage, that seems like a pretty glaring problem. Like, that seems weird that happened. But for the most part, if somebody speaks slightly different, I'm not too bothered by it, even though I'm the guy who hated David Duchovny because he called it Oregon. But
no, I do think that having the one person can help to just check, like, does it pass the sniff test? Because you can do research, but we see it in films where they try to do localization and they clearly didn't have a single person from the area to just double check. Like, Fast and Furious, I think 5 was in Brazil, and a lot of people weren't even speaking the way Brazilian people would speak.
Right.
And I can say that because I'm from Brazil. And likewise, if they had one Brazilian person to, like, hey, does this pass the sniff test of how someone would speak? They would say no, right? That's not even our language. That person is speaking Spanish and we speak Portuguese. So, I think the one person can help with the sniff test. But as you say, it won't give you the full picture, right?
When I get 3 of my friends together, Cadiz and all those guys, and they start talking, and they're all from Oregon. They're all from the same location, and even they have different slangs. That's how or not dangerous. That's how convoluted language is. Which to me, this kind of stuff fascinates me. But I know, to me, it's just a game, so I'm not going to be too bothered by it anyway. If it is off, it's just like, okay,
I don't have an issue with it.
Let's talk about something we do have an issue with.
A bit off. Yeah.
Go ahead, Silver.
Just one of the things I really admire about the Warhammer Fantasy setting is just the way they take
real orcs,
like real,
and they ask them
real world, no, not real world, like civilizations or societies, and put a twist on them, like whether it's the Dark Elves or the Empire or Bretonia or whatever it is, and then they put a twist on them from in the way they relate to, like, their sort of real world counterparts, with like massive amounts of historical research and historical and cultural research, and they've like misstepped pretty significantly, like back in the olden times with some of their depictions. But really, as the years have gone on, it's gotten better and better, to a level where now I think, like, the level of research and stuff they do with stuff that came out with like Cathay, for instance, recently, for Warhammer 3, I think is genuinely, like, impressive. The way they sort of use cultural customs, cultural myths and stuff, and integrate them into the setting, in a way that's recognizable, but is still has that Warhammer twist where everything gets dialed up to 11, as Spinal Tap would say. It's just fun, and it really is one of the main appeals of the setting, is that it's this recognizable world that feels real and recognizable, and yet it still feels extreme and fun.
In chat, I said, asked you guys, what games do you guys think a company nailed the realistic setting, a real place in? if there was one that you guys actually really enjoyed. Next up, let's talk a little bit about Star Wars Bounty Hunter. So this is getting a remaster. I saw Silver brought up a point, or somebody brought up a point, you were talking about it, so I shouldn't have said you brought this up, but somebody brought up a point about, like, why is it being remastered or remade or whatever, you know, remaster or mading, whatever this turns out to be. But I thought it was a pretty I went back and looked, seemed like it was fairly popular, seemed like a lot of people liked it. Didn't seem too questionable to me, you know, when I look at all these other remasters that we've got. But I'm sort of excited for it overall. I mean, I don't remember much of the original game. Have either one of you guys played Bounty Hunter in, like,
I played
10
it.
years?
Back, like, it was one of those games that was always in the bargain bin at the game store.
Right.
That's where I picked it up. And it kind of became a cult hit, I think, after that, where it was a game that a lot of people, like, referenced and talked about, at least back in the day. That was my impression. It was fun. Like, it wasn't a master game, like a masterpiece or anything. It wasn't that memorable, I don't think. But, you know, you played Jango Fett, you were catching people for bounties. It was good fun. What does disconcert me about the remaster, though, or the remake, is that it's Espeir doing it. Especially given the whole debacle around Knights of the Old Republic 2 from them. And how that whole thing went down. So that gives it a little unfortunate twist for me. But I mean, maybe they've turned things around after that. We can hope, but it doesn't look too promising, I don't think.
I don't know about you guys. I just feel like it's being made simply because we have Bounty Hunter TV shows, Mando and stuff like that. So to me,
I think unquestionably, it's cashing in on the Mandalorian popularity.
And it's an easier get than a brand new one. It's like, hey, we know it was somewhat liked. We're going to touch it up.
It's an IP they already have. Exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Already in-house.
Price-wise is going to be the big thing, right? Like what the price is. And I'm hoping, and I know I'm wrong. But I would love a $30 price. Yes, I know that doesn't make sense. It's just probably not going to be that. It'll probably be at minimum 40, 50, or 60. But I would love for them to be like, hey, man, we're turning this around quickly. Hey, here's, you know, we got Mando. I can't remember if Boba Fett and Mando are still going or if maybe it's just Mando. I can't, because I don't follow the shows too much. I watch them, but I don't, like, track where they are in development. But yeah, it seems like it's just, hey, here's a Star Wars is doing good. This is a game that was genuinely liked by a lot of people. Let's throw together a remaster. But the price on these things need to be representative of the competition they're going against right now, which is unfathomably larger than it was 10 years ago. Like, the competition for your money is so beyond belief now that you sort of got to figure it out. You got to price it for competition, not just what you've spent in. I know this sounds weird, but it's like, you can't just say we put enough work in it to charge 60, because it's drawing a line in the sand that right now, I mean, we have a lot of people who are, their Game Pass, that's all they've known, or they bargain bins or Steam sales. So when you have a Steam sale, didn't Steam sales just start yesterday? Another line of Steam sales?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, so summer sale.
Yeah, summer sale. So you look at this summer sale, and then we've also had this, I'm sure you guys have seen this, but like Beyond Good and Evil or something pops, and you're like, well, I can get the other version that isn't updated, but it costs $9. You know, I'm not saying that one is the same because I don't know the price of the old one, but I'm just saying that you get the remaster and you look at it and you're like, well, why do I need to do that? I can just get this other one that I can turn on upscaling, and it probably looks genuinely somewhat the same, and it's been patched up to this point. Bounty Hunter, I don't think, has a current version on PC. I haven't played that game in ages, but yeah, I'm excited to see it overall. It's just not gonna change my life if it comes out at 60. I'm just nervous it will. I don't know why, but I feel like companies right now are fucking missing the boat on the pricing. It's like, if you have different denominations of fucking cash, why are you not doing different denominations of your prices of games? I know that we've seen some go at 40, but the majority are still at $60 sometimes. And you're looking at it going, dude, if this was 30, the amount of purchases you would have, especially if it's good, versus, oh, it's good, 60, or oh, it's good 30 and I can get 2 games, I'm going to buy that game and another game. And I don't know. It's just the pricing is weird right now. I feel like this is happening a lot. We give Ubisoft a lot of shit, but they price Mirage better. You know, we get some of those where they're pricing them correctly, you know. Anything more about Star Wars? So we got Star Wars Bounty Hunter Remaster or remake, I can't remember which one. And then Dead Rising remake / remaster, whichever they turn out to be. So they're going back in time, man. Dead Rising is what, 20 years old? No, 15. No, it's not 20. That's on.
It is 20, I think. Yeah. Definitely.
Really? Dead Rising 1, 360, right? 360 launch title?
It's from before 2004, I'm reasonably sure, so it would have to be.
I feel, if it is, dude, man.
I know. Like,
that sucks.
I know, brother. Yeah.
Makes you feel old. I remember, I think that was launch or after launch for 360, I can't remember, but I remember playing Dead Rising and just being like, man, this is fucking so good. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And then you look at it now and you're like, damn. Looking game. But back then, you know how we always say that, you know, oh, it looks like there's no game that'll look better than this. It looks real. Look at the grass. And then you see it 10 years later and you're like, damn, was I just more blind back then? Like, I don't know. Comparisons are always weird that way. Let's give away something. Let's give away Shadow of the Erdtree.
Well, damn.
But let's ask some questions. Let's figure out a question. Let's do a hard question.
Okay.
Let's see.
Quiz about the game? No.
Let's do a quiz. Let's do...
Like an Elden Ring lore question?
Ooh, we could do an Elden Ring lore question. Wouldn't it be great if I knew Elden Ring lore?
or like, what's the name of the boss you need to beat to enter the DLC or something? Or maybe
they'll get that one too quick. Well, we'll continue talking, and I'm going to look for a question here. What else do we have for topics? Does anybody have anything else big? And I can go to Discord and grab theirs while I try to find a question.
I had a fun little topic. I looked at data from Steam about controllers that people use on Steam to play games.
Xbox. And
it turned out, 59% of users are using an Xbox controller, which is not surprising, right? 26% are using PlayStation controllers, and 10% are using Steam Deck, using the Steam Deck.
Oh, I see.
They're counting that as a controller. So that's interesting. 10%, that's
a
reasonable,
pretty decently sized chunk.
Decent chunk.
Xbox is number 1. Who's 2?
PlayStation at 26%.
Nintendo's Ultimate Pro controller isn't on there. Does that even happen?
I don't think it has PC support.
How many are using the Atari Jaguar?
I would think maybe there's a mod or something to implement it, but
yeah.
It's interesting. Some people use the PlayStation. It kind of seems alien to me, but it makes sense. Some people prefer the PlayStation controller.
Yeah, Lemon Streak does.
Oh, you mean when they're playing on PC? When I play on PC, I'll play with both. I'll play with whatever I was battery power. PlayStation has a couple little idiosyncrasies with compatibility sometimes, but
exactly.
But overall, it's all
better now, native support. But I've had to jump through a few hoops with the PlayStation one, so I don't really fuck around with it for
one
PC.
Of the things that also popped up was best bosses and stuff like that to keep with the best gaming podcast sort of discussion. We were trying to come up with best of, but then I was telling Johnny and Silver, what I sort of wanted to do was what's the best weather effect in a game?
Mm-hmm.
Like in a game, the best, it can be wind, it can be the sound of wind, but do you guys remember a game where you were like, this is the best effect? Like whether it's snow, whatever it is. Do you have one, Silver?
Yeah.
What is it?
Like Silent Hunter 3. Just the waves, the water modeling in that game. Like when it got stormy, and the waves got really high. I remember that blowing me away completely at the time.
Yeah, because I was thinking, do you know what blew me away, man? Was Morrowind Daggerfall, which is the one where you start out in Sayadine. That Morrowind? Morrowind. The water, is that Morrowind or Dagger? It's Morrowind. So in Morrowind, when you come off the boat and you see the water droplets, and this was the Xbox original back in the day, and I remember just seeing that water and hearing I call them, like blue whale sound. I don't know, whatever the Silt Strider thing, whatever those like the little teleport jellyfish weird creatures are, and they were doing their mewling in the background. And I remember coming off of that boat and just being like stunned. And Electro Mode just said my second guess, which was Drive Club. To this day, Drive Club, the racer for the PlayStation, PlayStation 4 is still one of the best looking games I have ever seen. It beats a lot of current games right now. In fact, most of them when it comes to weather. I am astonished at how good that game looks in weather, man. I was playing it a couple days ago, showing a friend, well, this was more like a month ago now, showing somebody who had come over, and I was showing them saying, like, look how old this game, and it still is like unbelievably good looking when it comes to the weather. Racers do that though. I feel like racers a lot of times. What about you, Johnny? Do you have any?
I have a couple. Red Dead 2 definitely did weather really well. They had a plethora of different, weather places, from like sunny to cold but sunny, and then just storms and stuff. That was really good. Ghost of Tsushima had some pretty good storms too.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I remember correctly, the way you played also affected the weather.
Yes.
Someone fact check me on that, but I think if you stealth a lot, you get more storms or something.
If you especially if you use like the rage ability, like you'll get the thunder and
you'll
the
get
storm.
thunder and lightning. And,
yeah, and you could like play the flute, right, to change the weather too.
Yeah. You can play the flute to like change whether to sunny, rainy, or whatever.
Yeah. I thought it looked really good.
Jay says the other one, or Big Mac says Sea of Thieves, and I think Sea of Thieves is current for me. I was going back farther, which I should have probably clarified, but for them, I just said any weather. But I would also say, and Flight Sim, somebody brought up, those are just, they're phenomenal, man. We're getting to the point now where weather is more noticeable if it's bad versus if it's good.
For old ones, I liked Heavy Rain. The game had a lot of issues, but I did like the rain sounds in it.
Also, honestly, like American Truck Simulator with the skyboxes, like they're still some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. Surprising as that may be.
Division, Jay Reaper says, Division is amazing.
Like the first one?
says, the first one, in Division, the snow, and it impacted the way you could play because it was harder to see. It's just so good. Indio says, I was blown away by playing outside, having actual weather systems back in the day. They were on the map and you could use them tactically. That's pretty fucking sweet. Yeah, that is pretty sweet.
Do you guys do the thing where if there's snow, you check to see if your footprints
absolutely. It's the first thing I check. What are you talking about?
Still stick around. I remember playing Valhalla. They had snowy peaks and stuff, and I was like,
so the first thing I do, Johnny, is I turn backwards, and then I line up with the tree if it's like forest, and then I back up until I see the trail go away, and I will judge the game. I'll be like, that trail better not go away right away, and I'll back up, and keep watching it until I start to see them remove the effect. I'll be like, aha, gotcha. What were you going to say?
First game I remember doing that was Uncharted 2, Drake's.
What
was that? Drake's Revenge?
No, Drake's Fortune was the first one, I think.
Okay.
I forget the subtitle.
A Thief's End or something, no?
Possibly.
Uncharted 2.
I forget the subtitle.
I'll look it up, but what about it?
Uncharted 2. But that's the one I remember as the first game that
Among Thieves.
I remember that had that had the footprints in the snow or the trail in the snow. When you're in the Himalayas.
Absolutely.
That's sweet. Some people are saying Soul Mask has pretty good weather. Let's see. Does anyone do amazing space weather? I would say I still think Freelancer, and obviously, you know, you've got Elite Dangerous, but Freelancer had space storms, I guess you'd call it, or electrical. They had, I think, of the Alaska system. All the super high up north in the map were these dangerous systems, radiation, storms, electricity, in the actual space itself. It was like dangerous places to fly, and I remember being really stunned. Everspace 2, I'm sure, does really good with that. I just haven't played Everspace 2 in ages, so I don't remember, you know, what it looks like now for space storms. Let's see. Shadow of the Erdtree, when I got back home. Outer Worlds skyboxes are amazing. Yeah, Outer Worlds, I know Outer Worlds is never going to be as high up on anybody's list as a game, but weirdly enough, I really like Outer Worlds locations. I don't know, man. There's something about Outer Worlds locations that really speak
they
to
were
me
small, but they were
feel
very charming.
Yeah, charming.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be a good way of saying it. Breckner says Freelancer's 21 years old. Yep. Freelancer is awesome and always installed on my PC. Next up, we got some questions from Discordians. Not Sure says, I recently got super pissed off at Eiyuden Chronicles because I unknowingly crossed a threshold that locked out the last character and the good ending. Have you ever had a gameplay experience soured by any kind of lockout mechanic?
Yes, like all the previous, or like the previous Suikoden games in particular, like as a Eiyuden reference, that was a prominent feature of those games.
And remember when they wouldn't warn you? Now they have a tendency to be like, hey, you better save because,
I mean,
the rest shuts down. But...
Yeah, there was no warning at all. Your only warning was going to a game guide on like GameFAQs or wherever you would go. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many
and figure
games.
out how to get all the 108 stars you needed for
I
the game.
Yeah, there's just so many games that lock you out. I mean, and I've been pissed at every one of them because a lot of times, Doom Eternal, well, it doesn't lock you out, but you basically get your spaceship, and if I remember right, in Eternal, you basically at some point you sort of go on and you don't return back to it. And I was so confused by like, why did I care about this thing in the first place if I'm just now leaving it?
Yeah,
right.
I despise that shit, but luckily games these days warn you. Not all games, but luckily they do.
No, I mean, speaking of the devil, you know, like Elden Ring has this annoying thing where you can easily lock yourself out of many quests by just playing normally. And a lot of them, if you don't specifically Google what the quest is, it's like, oh, you didn't talk to that person in this game state, therefore this person is not in this place and you cannot do their quest. And there are things like a consumable that gives you a lot of damage reduction that you simply can't buy because you didn't talk to this particular person when you were at a certain point in the game, for example. So there are like tangible things that will hurt you in the game. Like it will impact your, what would you say, your ability, damage negation, really. Or your damage output because you didn't know. And the only way to know, I think, is to Google it, really. I mean, some of those you can't really figure out in advance.
Thiz Viper says, just want to say thank you for the good conversation this week in Discord. It's been a tough week being laid off, and the conversations in Discord have been a really good distraction. Hope you all have a good weekend. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. A1 Nagel says, are there any games or franchises you disliked when younger but now enjoy? Mine is Myst. Games or franchises I now enjoy? Dark Souls stuff. I wasn't a fan of Dark Souls 1. Somewhat started like it in 2, liked it more in 3. But those weren't really when I was a kid. I'm trying to think back then of like what it was. Mario.
Yeah.
I didn't like Mario games. I liked 64, but I haven't really liked a Mario game until, well, it's not a Mario game, I guess. RPG, Mario RPG. I don't like Mario as a character. I don't know about you guys, but Mario doesn't do it for me. Like the entire shtick of Mario is not my shtick. I don't know what it... I was Sonic, probably edgy kid, I guess. Maybe that was the difference, is one's like family friendly. It's a me, and Sonic's like, fuck you. I sort of liked the difference in attitude. Is there any games for you guys that, you know, when you were like, for whatever reason, you were younger and they, even a genre of games?
I think simulator games probably I wasn't huge on when I was a kid.
Patience-wise, probably, right? Do you think it was patience for you?
I think it wasn't so much patience as like I looked at like something like Flight Simulator, and the thought was, this is way too complicated for anything I'm interested in. Like,
good point.
This is way too intimidating for me. There's just too much going on. And like I had trouble like with games like Total Annihilation and Supreme Commander because I like the micromanagement those games required, and like the overview of the battlefield I just couldn't carry out because I would get too focused on one part of the battlefield, and then I would lose sight of everything going on elsewhere. So that was also an issue.
You're the guy naming all your people in Age of Empires. You're like, this is Bill, this is Alex, and then when they die, you're like, why are they dying? Oh, it's because Jebediah up north didn't block the bad guys. Yeah,
I'm saving 3 regiments. Meanwhile, the rest of my army has been
absolutely for sure. And you're like trying to set it up right down here, and you're not even paying attention to the red blobs on the mini map. And you're like, nah, man, I gotta save Alex and Joe Bob. What about you, Johnny? Is there any for you?
I think the only thing I can think of is first person. I was always like intimidated when I was younger by those, and I wasn't ever very good when I tried. And then over the years, I kind of got over that and enjoyed a lot of first person games.
Yeah, viewpoint definitely for me. Third person were less enjoyable when I was younger, and then I've liked them more now. But it took me a while because I don't love the camera in most third person games. They always feel either cheaty or clumsy, and now we're starting to get more and more where it just hits really well. Kel says, game dev MyHoyo Genshin Impact just brought their first tokamak online in Shanghai so that they can begin experimenting with fusion power. What are your thoughts on the implications? Also, what other game or game company, hardware companies should branch out and into what fields? So have you guys seen this, where basically this is the Genshin Impact guys have enough money that they basically have a fusion reactor, and they're fucking around with it?
Well, I mean, they have an investment in a company that has the fusion reactor. Yeah.
It doesn't really bother me. I read it, thought it was sort of funny, but are there any companies you'd like to see? I mean, dude, I think a lot of these companies branch out in hardware already, or they branch out in software systems. A lot of them are branched out already. Sega branches out in, what are those machines in Japan? Pachinko? Whatever it's called.
Pachinko, yeah.
Yeah.
That, funny enough, makes me feel positive about humanity, that we're turning something that I largely view as negative, which is the gacha gaming, people spending their whole earnings on characters and stuff, into, science or something cool, something like productive.
I like the idea that these companies, so governmental energy is one thing, but I also like the idea of, guys on the side doing, of course, if their regulations are strict enough. But I don't want to melt down so that we have Stalker 3 based over there because something's happened. But yeah. Sojourner says, what is one gaming item, game accessory console that you own that you would like immortalized, cannot be destroyed, broken, or lost?
Probably my Game Boy Advance SP, but it's almost nearly indestructible already. So,
oh, why? You mean just because it's made like a tank?
Just how it's made, yeah. Like I've dropped it like a bunch of times and stuff. Doesn't do anything to it. Like it's like an old Nokia phone, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say for me it would probably be the Virtual Boy, because I would want everybody to realize,
right,
what the fuck was Nintendo thinking back then? Like the Virtual Boy to me is such a holy shit moment that everybody, a lot of us are like, oh dude, there's no game that's like, or there's no company that does everything right other than Nintendo. And I'm like, dude, they had Virtual Boy, they had whatever that cardboard VR one was. So yeah, I would say the Virtual Boy. I would love that. Like when any company tries to make hardware or whatever, I would just like that to pop up as a warning. Be like, whatever you're doing, remember Nintendo tried the Virtual Boy. Red and black burned into your fucking eyes. Like,
I also love the fact that they actually had, like, for the Super Nintendo, they had the rocket launcher peripheral.
Did they? What was that?
Yeah, they basically like a bazooka, basically.
Well, they had a similar thing for Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy X2 had some gun controllers.
I forget what it was called.
So the protagonist used, a couple pistols, and you could buy these pistols that you connected as controllers, could play the full game.
Yeah, light guns I like the idea of, but they're so locked
scope.
in as a peripheral. Yeah, Super Scope. I saw somebody post that. I had forgot all about that one. Dude, Nintendo, always out there. Always out there trying their thing. Master Pez says, now that Metallica's in Fortnite. Okay, I've now learned Metallica's in Fortnite. What other bands do you want to see featured in games? Also, do you still hate Metallica for Napster lawsuits, or are you a tiny little baby born in the 2000s? I forgot that they had it. Yeah, they didn't want Napster because of the piracy, right?
Yeah.
I don't care that bands are in games. But I love like mixtape where they go towards Stranger Things nostalgia. I like that kind of stuff. But like I don't play Fortnite enough to even know what they do in Fortnite.
Would it be different if it was like a VR experience where you could kind of like, I guess, watch them play live, but as if you're on stage with them or something, and like be able to look around?
I mean, I think the big obvious answer is like the Beatles, and maybe like they already did like a Yellow Submarine movie. So it would kind of be a natural transition to the Yellow Submarine game or something, where you incorporated a lot of their songs or something. You could do that. Probably on a personal level, maybe something with Creedence, because Creedence is my favorite band.
Are they? Creedence your favorite?
Yeah.
I like the idea of people who have passed away. I know it sounds weird, but like, because we can't see them play anymore, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
like Jimi Hendrix, I can't go see him play. There's only so many shows that I can watch from him that have been recorded. So I do like the idea of like, hey, you can see Jimi Hendrix.
Marley, people who are like iconic
Bob Marley
in that way.
Yeah, and you can see them play in Fortnite and do like different stuff, I guess.
Let me just say the reason why this doesn't appeal to me. It's because I love the idea that you said they could be immortalized. I already find them immortalized on like YouTube.
Yeah, they can also be exploited, or
they can be exploited. Yeah. I can see them live recorded on YouTube. The idea of Metallica being in Fortnite doesn't mean anything to me because it's not Metallica in Fortnite. It's like it's just a thing there. It's like Bruce Lee in UFC. It's fun, but it's not, it's fun. But it doesn't make me think, oh man, I like this band. I would love to see them. I instead like when their music is done intelligently in a show or in a game much more than seeing them. I love when you have a game where the music hits just right and it's you do hear a licensed song you didn't expect and you're like, holy shit, that hits hard. Like that is, for example, the biggest hit hard moment ever in movies to me. It's not a classic. Well, it's sort of classical, but it's not a classic in the way of that it's a classic song, though I think some people think, or a classic movie, though in some ways people would think that. But I thought Iron Man having Ozzy Osbourne, when that happened, I remember just going like, what the fuck? Was that the most perfect synergy of like that just was like
it hit perfectly.
Dude, it hit perfect. And regardless of what I think of Marvel movies, they've hit perfect a couple dozen times on certain things. And in games, I never really feel that. To me, Metallica and Fortnite is just an avatar of Metallica playing music for it. It's not the same thing as when somebody puts this perfect thing together and it's just like,
but that's a good point.
If you make, I think then the question also go to like if you make like a Brutal Legend style game with like a particular band or something.
It does, but I didn't like Brutal Legend very much, and I like Jack Black.
No, but I
agree. Yeah,
do that kind of thing like with like a Rolling Stones.
But I mean,
motif or something maybe.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why I would want to see the Rolling Stones in a game, even if it was like let's say Persona, where they use their guitar to kill enemies or whatever. I think I would be like, well, I'd rather
Ozzy Osbourne.
Or Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah. And I know that's sacrilegious to say I didn't love Brutal Legends, but I wasn't I mean, I liked it. It wasn't like elevated to some god status. Though I like Jack Black personally, I think he is hilarious and awesome. Seems really good natured. I love him, and I want to see him. Just because I don't like him doesn't mean shit.
You know, Tenacious D.
I'd still play it. Tenacious D, yeah. Kel says a follow up would be, what band would you like to see as the core of a core of a game? Yeah, I don't have any for that. It's just not a thing for me.
Core of a game? Yeah. That's even tough to think because we don't see a lot of licensed music in games outside of the, like
Rock
you were
band
saying,
or
the mixtape, or if it's maybe a sports game sometimes, a racing game. Yeah, that's.
Okay, I have this is going to be out of the box. Lindsey Sterling is the what'd she play? I'm trying to call it the fiddle. It's not violin. Don't know what I was trying to call fiddle.
The fiddle.
If you had Lindsey Sterling playing some kind of magical creature like a pixie, running around using her violin to control enemies and shit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Something like that would work for me because she's got a certain persona that fits, and then it would fit into a magical game about things. But like when you say Rolling Stones, I'm like, I'm just surprised they're alive.
Right.
Right. But my brain doesn't go towards a game with them, but it does with her. Trying to think if there's another musician known for it. I think it would be one person, like Silver was saying, Jimi Hendrix. Like,
I think indie games are really good for this, by the way, because
if they have the money to license.
Yeah, of course. But I played a game called The Artful Escape, which was an indie on Game Pass, which was about like guitar playing. It was a guitarist who was having like writer's block, and he was having an intergalactic trip. And throughout the game, you would have these segments where, they're playing guitar riffs and kind of like dynamically with your inputs and stuff like that. But it was clearly, someone really talented playing the guitar. So it would be cool if you said, we're making a game around, you could pick one artist you like, Paul Gilbert or so, like one guitarist you like, and just say Andy Timmons, and just say, well, the game is about the music in a way, and it's him playing the tunes. Maybe there's dynamics with you controlling and then the music reacting to it. I think that can work.
I think the legends and stories of music would work better, like Crossroads or Ralph Macchio, like Deal with the Devil. I could see a game that was like a Deal with the Devil thing where you're a character who like has to get so good with your instrument during your life, almost like a Telltale thing where you're making choices in your life. And then at the very, 20 years of time passes and you have some kind of, last ditch guitar off with an enemy. But it just doesn't.
The devil went to Georgia.
Yeah, but it's more, to me, it's more about the devil and the soul of an artist than it is the artists, the named artists. Like, I don't care. I love a lot of artists, but I don't think of them as having a big enough legend that I would care they're in the game. It would be more about like choose your instrument and then you're playing Rock Band. Like I would love Rock Band to make a game out of this and say here's your career mode. Your career mode is you make a deal with this weird shadowy creature. They have 20 years to get 4 stars on every song. And if you don't, or something like that, where you have a little fun with it. But the idea of Def Leppard being the ones, Phil Collin or Rick Savage playing, I'm just like, dude, I already know they're good. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? I mean, they're already going to beat the devil. Like, why the fuck?
And in a way, it's like a really famous actor. When you see a really famous actor in a movie, it's almost like the character is less prevalent than the actor themselves.
Yeah.
And so if I'm playing a game and I hear, let's just say someone really recognizable, like Jeff Beck, not Jeff Beck, but, he's passed away. But, someone really recognizable, it would just be about that person rather than about the game in a way. Yeah. So what I actually really like is, for example, Alan Wake, right? They worked with the band.
Nailed it.
And they had a really good mix. It just worked really well.
Parts of the fall,
Right. And I just like the happenstance of like sometimes they find a band that really meshes well with the vibe of the game they're trying to make. Fallout 5 No, not Fallout. Far Cry 5 had some really good music
banger
in it.
Do you know what I thought, Johnny? You mentioned Alan Wake. I legitimately thought one of the DLCs was going to be about them, the band.
Yeah.
I actually assumed dumbly, but before they said what the DLC was, I, in my brain, was like, these guys are such a big deal. They've had the licensing issue in the past. Now everything's fixed. They're in it. We're doing number 2. I thought the DLC, here's what I thought. I thought it was going to be Alan Wake, and then I thought it was going to be the Control, Jesse from Control. And then I legitimately was like, oh, I bet you're going to be one of these 2 old fucks running around, and it would be like about that. They would somehow do a little bit about that, like they're opening dimensional doors with their guitar or something.
They also did the credit song for Max Payne 2. Follow Max Payne.
Did they? Same band?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, so there you go. Remedy, if you're listening, and you should be, because it's the best gaming podcast. I'm just joking. That kind of thing to me would appeal to the nerds and to the wow moment that occurs in Alan Wake already. Because Alan Wake already has such a good, they're able to pull shit in that doesn't normally make sense. I would love something like that. Moving on from that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I feel like the big thing you could do probably is some kind of Fantasia style thing.
Absolutely. I think that's what I was thinking with Lindsay
where you
Sterling.
take like say the Beatles, and you take like a number of their songs and you make mini games or something over them as certain songs are playing or something. And maybe so you're doing stuff actively as the songs are playing. And maybe it somehow corresponds to the lyrics or the theme or motif.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Or
like
whatever.
Rolling Stones they do have the older songs that are a little bit more thematic than anything we see now.
Right.
So that would be cool to have like a level based on something they talked about. You know, what's the really popular Rolling Stone song about I'm going to say about a woman? There's probably 50, but there's one particular one. Fuck, I can't remember. I don't remember many Rolling Stone songs, but I remember one particularly, and I think the lady's name is, is it Angie? I can't remember, but like Michael Jackson's Dirty Diana or something, you know, but I mean, you get my drift of like finding something and making a world out of it. That would be that would be awesome. I think that, I hadn't thought about that. That would be a cool way to introduce somebody to the music too, right? That would be,
it is.
I think, man, that I can see that. And I also feel that old bands, whether it be Stairway to Heaven or something but you have the old, not Stairway to Heaven, that's a TV show. What's the song? Or is it Stairway to Heaven?
Stairway to Heaven is the song as well from Led Zeppelin.
But you have that's thematic. You could make a level out of that where you're climbing, like it's a platformer, and you're jumping to you have to hit the musical tones. That kind of stuff, dude. That's wicked, man. Yeah.
Like Welcome to the Jungle.
There we go. That's exactly what I was saying. Yes. Because I love music now. There's a lot of bands I really like, but they're a little less thematic unless they're really, emo. It's like She Broke Up With Me, or a country song where it's like I lost my dog and my cat. Psych Chicken says, do you guys think esports and streamers have ruined multiplayer games, mainly shooters? Them wanting to have their own game in the spotlight and wanting to make everything balanced to be able to have those kind of competitive leagues, buff and nerfing weapons consistently, and many times doing so based off players that play far more than the average player. You're never able to use ridiculous weapons or attachments because everyone has to use the meta of the week. Yes, I do believe that. That's just me. I've really lost a lot of my heat for multiplayer games because of the consistent,
meta.
It just feels like the moment something works, they're like, whoa, that works too well. And I'm like, you know what? That's sort of on the other player. Fix your shit. Maybe you're going to have to get good, but it does feel like it does feel like streamers have an inordinate amount of sway, especially if they do it a lot, where they say one thing and everybody's like, oh, they're for sure right. And it's like, I don't know if that's true, but you could say the same thing for reviewers. If I say a game's bad and it gets a ton of views, is that an inordinate amount of instant feedback that maybe is negative? Yes, it is. I guess that's just life right now, right? It's the life of the information we get at light speed versus the old days.
One thing that does bother me a little bit is with Warhammer 3, where there is a competitive side to the multiplayer, And because stats carry over between units in multiplayer and in single player, whenever they like rebalance for multiplayer, they also sort of rebalance the units in single player when units in multiplayer are a little too powerful, or whatever. So they might get nerfed, and then they also get nerfed in the single player campaigns. And that can sometimes annoy me a little bit because sometimes I enjoy a unit being really powerful or something, and then it gets nerfed because it's too powerful for multiplayer or competitive multiplayer. That does bother me a little bit, but it's also, it's just a part of the entire ecosystem.
Exactly.
I do kind of wish that maybe they would separate it so that they would have different stats on the units for multiplayer and different stats in single player. But I also understand why they don't do that and why they keep it consistent. So it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I am, is like I'll bitch about it and I'll still play them occasionally and I'll still be like, man, I wish this hadn't changed, or there's this thing that it works and people are bitching and I don't even have to be doing it. In fact, I can tell you guys, there's been games I've played where I jump in and people are like, watch out, people are camping at this spot, and I almost never get mad at the camper. I'm like, that's on us. We need to make that camping location as super unreliable as we can for that person. But instead, most of the time what happens is people don't want to play that way. They want the highest kill rate. They want that. Right. I just got to see this, unfortunately, with somebody in our streams. Last couple of days, I've been streaming various multiplayer fighting games and stuff, and people just quitting after one match if they even start to lose. And you're like, damn, that sucks balls. Like,
yes.
And that's been a problem. I'm certainly not saying that's a new problem, but it does suck that they're focusing on one particular thing, like whether it be the win-loss ratio or the TKD. There's certain things people are looking at that it's like, it's become so by the numbers. This is the same thing that bothers me whenever a lot of people play towards the achievements, and you're like, well, you kicked a guy 100 times. That means nothing in the game. It just means you kicked a guy 100 times. It doesn't. There's no connection to the actual narrative. And you're right, Silver. It's like we can bitch about it, but it means nothing. It is just the ecosystem we live in now. There's no real out of it. Moving on from there, though, I wanted to hit the Nintendo Direct a little bit because Metroid Prime 2 was shown or announced. 4. I'm reading you put 2. Ha! This is the only time I haven't made a mistake. You did.
No, but that's me making a mistake,
Metroid Prime 4 was announced or shown?
Both.
But,
no. It had been announced earlier. Yeah.
Okay.
But like it has also like been sort of rebooted from scratch. The development at one point. So like we didn't know a whole lot about the development. There were a lot of rumors and stuff, and now we saw actual gameplay, and it looked like Metroid Prime.
Awesome.
Probably
one of the highest games on my list.
Exactly like what I wanted out of a new Metroid Prime.
No, not a remake, Johnny.
It's a new one?
No, it's it's a new one. A continuation of the story. Exciting potential for the villain. I don't remember his name because I never played the game where he appears. But he has apparently been sort of teased in the Metroid broader sort of products for a while. So it's exciting that he's making an appearance, because that is something that Metroid has kind of been missing a little bit, like a proper sort of antagonist to Samus. Where the closest we've kind of gotten consistently has been Ridley, I think, the giant bird monster. It's exciting to see something like a new adversary for her.
Obviously, Switch 1 does it. It's a little interesting to me that they showed it for Switch, and Switch 2 is supposedly summer of next year or whatever. The idea of what it would look like on Switch 2, or if we're going to get a cross-platform kind of game. Does it have a multiplayer? Does Metroid 4 have multiplayer?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I would be I can't imagine what Metroid multiplayer would be like, kind of.
I think in my brain I'm just thinking GoldenEye. Kind of, just running around different weapons. Everybody's same.
You
guy.
don't really, and I think they showed this in the trailer. There's not really free aim very much in Metroid Prime. You kind of use like a lock-on system where it's not really the specific aiming, although you do kind of like adjust it a little bit, but it's more about movement and positioning and moving around and stuff.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That's really important.
So how many years after
Metroid?
When the hell was Metroid Prime 3 then?
I think 3 was like 2006 or 7.
Wii?
I think it was the Wii. Yeah, all
Damn.
3. The first Metroid Prime was the GameCube. I think Metroid Prime was the GameCube as well, and then 3 I think was the Wii.
Damn, right. So 2007 for the Wii.
Dude, that is so crazy. That is so crazy. They took a long ass time to do this. Damn.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
You know, I guess that's the thing. They took this long. Why not show it for the whatever? You know, I just think that
it is weird,
Switch
right?
Too long. Yeah, because a little bit, but
they're saying it's for 2025 too. So it's not even like they're trying to get it out the door this year or anything.
No, but I mean, they did have like they announced for like I think 5 years ago, maybe.
It has been a while, I think.
And then like there was something went wrong in development, and they had to start all over, scrap everything, and start all over.
Damn.
So yeah.
Listen, I'm behind it, man. I'm firmly behind. If you want to scrap, this is just an example, just because I was watching his videos for something I'm doing in the future. But I was watching a Ken Levine interview, and he was talking about he said this, by the way. I'm not saying this. He said this. So taken out of context, it sounds weird. But he said, you really do have to kill your babies. You really do. You like, he was saying you have to find a company that's willing to pay for that, to make good stuff. And he makes a certain thing where he has to do that. Other developers have not had to kill their game over and over. He does. Whatever. That's just the way he makes games. But I like the idea of if Prime, if they were in the middle of it and they're like, hey, this isn't working out, this is not what we want. I'm happy that Nintendo gives them the opportunity to be
it's also true of like nearly every creative process, right? Writing. You have to go to an editor.
Dude,
the editor has to like
Man, the first time I got something back from an editor, I really legitimately couldn't drive at the time because I was only 17. But I'll tell you what, I wanted to pay a bus to pick me up so I could go beat the fuck out of them. Because if you're not accustomed to that kind of feedback of killing something, and when you first send something, you get it back, and it's like red ink. This is back in the day when it was pen and paper.
Yeah.
And you get red ink, and it's like this entire paragraph is bad, and you're all, that entire paragraph is fucking not bad. You're so... So the idea that
you're so attached to it.
I love the idea of people coming together. Again, it's impossible because the money is so Nintendo is a different beast. But if they didn't feel whatever Prime was hitting, and now they feel it's hit, I do think it's unfortunate that it's not a Switch 2 launch title. That's what I'm saying. I just feel like that would be a great launch title because it would be a shooter. Even though, like you're saying, maybe the aiming is a little different, it's still a shooter for a handheld. Here's our shooter. It's a Prime title. And I love the idea of a launch title being that Prime title. We don't have that as much anymore. Like that you and I might be accustomed to, especially Silver, where in the old days you'd buy that, whatever it was, it would have 3 games usually. Your racer, your platformer, that kind of thing. And these days it feels like the game is just, or the system's released and there's a couple games, and they're usually not even the premier company's games. They're usually like a third party that is known about the new device, and the first party ones come at a different time. T-Mox says 360 era had so many killer launch titles. Yeah, it's one of the few, maybe that's why those systems in my brain are the premier systems when they have a bunch of launch titles. Like 360 did, PS3 did. PS4 I felt was really strong. But that's because I'm a Killzone freak. That game, that particular one, I was like so stunned by Killzone. What was that? Killzone. What was the name? What was the subtitle for that one? Do you guys remember Killzone, where they landed in the skyscrapers?
I do remember the game.
I just remember that trailer being like, oh my God, it was so crazy. T-Mox says, did Halo 1 drop at the launch of the OG? Was it launch day?
Yeah, Halo 1 was launch day.
Yeah, see, dude, that's a hit, right? That's like that's an awesome title.
It's a launch title.
Was it Shadowfall?
Shadowfall. Thank you.
Shadowfall was the PlayStation 4 title.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Even though the game wasn't even that, it wasn't like it wasn't mechanically the best or anything like that. It was just one of those titles that, you know how it used to be where you get the new system and it had something that just wasn't possible on the prior system. Graphically, you were like, oh my God, this is just not possible. And now it doesn't feel as much like that. I'm certainly not dissing on a lot of the launch titles that we've got that have been great, but what's the best launch title ever? Now, it'll be hard. We'll have to look this up because I'm sure we'll think one's a launch title and it isn't. If Halo 1 was a launch title for OG, that might be my answer, to be honest.
Demon's Souls for PS5.
Was it out day one on PS5? Oh, there you go.
I believe so.
That's a good example. Yeah, and there was a good remake or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Mario 64. Dude, Mario 64 is a hard game to fucking battle against. God of War 3. Man, I didn't know God of War 3.
Was it Metal Gear Solid 4 for PS3,
PS4, PS3?
I don't know if it was launch title, but it did launch more or less at the
launch title.
Yeah. And maybe not.
Could be wrong.
Yeah, it's just
it's been a long time. I don't think it was a long time after.
It's such an amazing jump in power when you see those kind of things that
it was, yeah.
It felt so good because it was like, in a way, your purchase was like, this is the differentiator. It's like, we're finally seeing this thing.
Dude, I mean,
instead of this sort of neutered kind of thing.
From PS1 to PS2, from PS2 to PS3.
Yep.
It was giant, and 4 was also big. I think now it's kind of like...
Oh, it's definitely neutered now.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah. It's because it's a lot of the ideas like, oh, we don't want to leave anybody behind. And it's like, well, you could certainly do both versions. Like, you could do a PS3 version, PS4, 5, 6. But I like that day one launch that just shows you that, hey, here's a reason. And of course, we want the game to be good, not just graphically. But I'm saying that moment when you get that new game and you're like, damn, this is amazing. Like, this is I think some of the old racing games were phenomenal too. I wonder if
they were.
Was Gotham Racing an Xbox original day one?
Powerhouses back then.
Yeah, they were, man. Racing games used to be the way to sort of
Ridge Racer for the PlayStation.
Ridge Racer, yeah, dude, those were good times. Wait. Did we launch with Mario Kart?
No.
What did we launch with that made Wii so popular? Was it probably just the tennis?
Wii Sports was the one that made it really popular.
Yeah, those were the good old days.
I would say, like, the only one that really comes to mind for me that I remember is Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild. I mean, I don't even love it that much, but like when you look at it, I can see why people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. We have some questions on Twitter too, by the way. I want to get to them. Def Ego says, Disney adults and Nintendo adults, are they two different faces of the same coin? Disney adults and Nintendo adults. I don't know. I like myself a couple Nintendo games. I like myself some Disney shows. I'm sure that's probably an anti-woke comment, but they have a place, man. I don't know. I like a lot of Disney titles. Are they the same type of adult? Probably not. Ransom says, happy Friday, gents. Here's a random one. If you had to live in a different country for a year, what would it be and why? Ooh.
Italy.
Italy for a year? Why?
Incredibly beautiful country. I like the people. Like southern Italy, particularly. Affordable. Nice climate. Although it is getting on the hotter side these days.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not going anywhere that hot, man. I'm going. Maybe I'll go to Danish land where Silver lives. You know, that seems like that seems like a nice place to.
I want to go to Ireland, really bad.
Yeah, it's getting hot even here though these days.
Craig, wait, you want to go to Ireland? So sorry, is there something specific there, or just the
just like the entire culture, the vibe, the history? It's beautiful in the places that I would want to go, and it's one of the few places that when I was doing my old job, we got to work pretty closely with groups from there. I just generally liked everything about their entire ideal of how to live and stuff like that. Of course, not everybody's going to be that way. It's just like any other place. But as I've grown up, it's been Scotland, Ireland. Like those would be places that just be fun to overall visit. I think that I don't really have a lot of places I want to go. I am an internet person, so like if I see a video of a place, I've been there in my brain. I'm like, all right, man, I saw somebody did a GoPro of Australia. Don't want to go. Looks cool though. I'll watch a video. But Ireland, Scotland, I would want to go to. I'd like to go to Japan, but I think that my brain knows the realism of what it would, like when I was a kid, what I thought it was versus now. Probably
it's funny you mention it because I thought about Japan and then I realized, oh no, they said 1 year.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was bringing up. Right.
Japan.
That's exactly. And 1 year, you've passed the honeymoon phase. You might even be into the divorce phase. You might be into the sex and other people phase at a year. That's a long time. Like you are now a true member of whatever that culture
babysitter.
is. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Babysitter phase.
Hot babysitter phase. Craig Ferguson says games with bad map design. Control jumps straight to mind for me. Games with bad map design. Control.
Did it have bad? I mean, I got lost in it, but I don't think
that
it was
the way
map
the world
design.
was
I think
built.
They made it labyrinthine. Yeah, they made it.
Yeah, I don't. But regardless, that was his example. I guess games with bad map design. Games with Lucitan says, I have a Guinness ready for you, Karak, if you come. Hey, if I come, I'm gonna show up to your door. Be like, dude, let's see if Lucitan is just as goofy as I think he is, which I'm assuming he is. I would love to. I would visit him. Go ahead.
They're keeping you accountable. What about the Erdtree giveaway you talked about?
Yeah, I've got the question here. We're not done.
We have the question? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but back to now that's made me forget bad map design. Yeah, bad map design. Is there a game with bad map design? And what would that be?
I mean, the only thing is the obvious answer is yes, but I'm blanking on thinking.
So like we're thinking open world where like the map is just
Control's not open world. I mean, okay, this is going to be a hot take, but bear with me. I truly do feel this way. I liked Alan Wake 1's open world, though it was closed off, but you could see the places you went. I was not nearly as much of a fan at all of Alan Wake 2's level load, pop in, go here, pop there, go there. And it distinctly impacted my enjoyment, especially when I felt like a lot of the locations in that game, like, dude, in the forest sometimes, it just felt like they had hired 3 guys to clear out a trail. And all those trails were going to go to the same place. And it felt very closed off and very not what I was hoping I would see from Alan Wake 2. Even though I like Alan Wake 2. And it distinctly... So maybe I'm sort of hitting on what Craig was saying with Control. I'm not quite sure because I still don't... I sort of feel Control had a reason where Alan Wake 2 felt disjointed. It was like, you're going here. And by the way, that's a part of the story. I get it. But I'm saying even when you went back to the places you had been... It didn't light my fire nearly as much as being able to look at the radio station in Alan Wake 1 and realize that's really there versus a load. That was disappointing to me. But do you guys have any?
Yeah. Last of Us Part 2. I think one of my big critiques of that game was its map design. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the time it felt way too constrained for me, and part of it was because of sort of the sort of believability, I guess it went for in its tone, and a lot of the cutscenes that made the constrained nature of its map design so much more noticeable. So that when you were walking through some of its larger locations, like say the starting town, I forget the name of it, where Ellie and Joel have been living. And you're walking through that, and you're walking down the street, and it's just like arbitrarily blocked off in sections by there's some lumber lying here conveniently, or a truck parked in the middle of the road, or or whatever it is to block you off. You can't actually go and explore this town or whatever. You're just walking down this narrow little alley, or the stadium with Abby later on as well. And just generally the levels are where it's just a narrow, constrained corridor a lot of the time that you're moving down. Sometimes it opens up a little bit, but not very often.
Just close,
and you're moving through these doors. Yeah, and you're moving through these doors from section to section. It just started feeling really constrained and really tedious, and in a way that was really inconsistent to me with the game's overall sort of tone for realistic delivery and stuff. It felt very disconnected.
That's very fair. What about you, Johnny? Any for you?
Trying to think. I would like to think I don't really play games with bad maps, because
can I ask you a question then? Can I ask you if this game? I felt that while I love the movement in Monster Hunter Rise, it was a distinct drop from Monster Hunter World. Did you feel that? Did you feel that drop, or is that just me?
I liked navigating the maps in Rise more than I did in World.
But was that just because of the wire bug and the game was set up to use the wire bug?
And the verticality and the fact that I could climb stuff.
I liked the verticality in it.
Yeah. And like jumping. Yeah, it was more fun.
That's fair.
I would say.
So you don't have any? What about... No, that wouldn't be fair. So what about Lords of the Fallen or those kind of games? Has there been a Dark Souls that stepped away? Surge 2, you and I joke about it being like a wicker work of fucking shortcuts that didn't make a lot of sense sometimes. What about Pinocchio Land, the other game you like?
Pinocchio Land. I don't think the maps are that interesting in Lies of P. It is. Thank you. Yeah, it's quite linear in its design.
Mm-hmm.
And it has ways in which it goes back to an area unlocking a shortcut that seems quite predictable, because you start the area, you see a closed door that doesn't open from this side, and you immediately know that that's going to be an access back right to that. So yeah, I think it's a bit trite how they do that, and it is quite linear, so for sure you could fault it for that. I don't think the maps are particularly interesting either. The setting is okay, but like the actual construction of the levels is not that interesting.
So I'll give you an example.
Talked about like some of the placements of stairs and things didn't quite make sense, was a little bit random.
So here's another one you and I have talked about that somebody dropped in chat. Fucking Strangers of Paradise. That game's map and levels are horrendous and easily trump any complaints I have of Alan Wake 2, because that wasn't really even a huge complaint. It was just a letdown. Dude, that game... Man, there has been few games in the world to make me actively be pushed away from a title like Strangers of Paradise. That was
like
atrocious.
An empty hallway and someone plopped a chest
down, and it was just these square it looked like snap maps from Quake, but somehow worse. And you were just like, what the fuck? It's so bad, man. That's a better example than any I have. Like,
yeah, that's good.
That is a fucking travesty of map design. I cannot believe I'm actually mad at myself for not having said that, because that is by far the best example of any. Dude, it's so bad. I remember playing it and thinking to myself, this has to be a dream location to where they're going to show me the good location later. There was no chance this got released looking like this, and that this is what I was going to have to live through the entire game. And it was a nightmare that just became real. Oh man, terrible. Good example, man. I appreciate that. I hadn't thought about that one, but that was a perfect example. We got more questions from Discord, and then what do we got? What are we at? Damn, we're only 2 hours, 30 minutes, man. Dude, we're working through this shit.
2:30.
So, had some other questions I wanted to hit on. People were asking if any of us have taken more Udemy, I think is the term, but any of the online classes. Some people are doing Unreal. Johnny has done Unreal, I believe, as well, right, Johnny? That was the link.
Yeah, I'm still in the middle of one. It kind of teaches you Unreal 5 and third person, setting up interactions and things like that.
I think when you look at it, for the most part, all of those Skillshare kind of things, as long as you know what you're spending it on, you can usually go and see reviews for them. Most of them are very good. And, when it comes to like C++ and stuff like that, a lot of them start out very basic. They start out sort of the same level. Do you feel like you definitely got your money's worth out of it, right? Like
absolutely. I haven't finished it yet, but even in the bit that I did.
Well, you also only have 2 weeks. Isn't that right?
Well, I had like 2 days where I went full ham, and now I'm just chipping away at it. But they do a good job of teaching you a specific thing, like, for example, how to put a coin you can pick up in the map. And then they kind of tell you, go away and, build some stuff, right? And then they show you what they built, which is cool because then you see, oh, damn, there's levels to this. Okay, like this guy did it in this cool way,
Where so you're really happy just building a box with a coin in the center.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I hear you.
Pretty basic.
Like, this is great, man. I could release this right now. This level is good enough. And then you go online on some YouTuber channel, an Unreal Sensei or something.
And they have all these things where, like, no, they duplicate the thing, and then they, anyway, yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool.
It looks here, reading some people's ideas. Rage open world map was awful. God of War is a good candidate for a bad map. The Library in Halo. Library in Halo is considered, even by the developers, is pretty rough. I think that's a fair assessment. Nuke Dukem Forever.
Man, I remember I remember playing that co-op, taking pretty much the entire night getting through that on
legendary
heroic difficulty.
Yeah, that was it was a rough title, man. It was a rough title or sorry, level. When you go in and you see all the other levels,
just the same. Yeah, it's just the same over and over and over. Yeah.
And what's weird is
endless flood as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reinforces it.
It does. It reinforces it. It's like you keep going, and it's a little bit like the other game I talked about, where you keep going and you're like, it can't be this bad. Like, it's not. It's going to get better, right? And then it never got better. It just ended. And then you got to other levels, and you're like, well, that was weird. That was like an anomaly compared to the rest. In a way, there was sort of a respite, a little bit of a nice. Go ahead.
It wasn't. I don't know that it really was that much of an anomaly, because you go to some of the others and you're moving through the same areas in those as well. Like, I remember, like, there was another level. I don't remember which one, but the one with all the bridges where you keep climbing higher and higher and higher, and you keep crossing up over these bridges that are higher and higher continually. But every time you go into the other side of the bridge, like, the area has the exact same layout every time.
Are you talking about where there's 2 bridges side by side and there's bad guys over here? You work, you go up over. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I get that. I just feel like the library was so.
Yes,
there was
it was even worse. Like, it was even more egregious. Yes,
yeah. But I do understand what you're talking about, because I was playing with Dev Guy just like 3 weeks ago. We were playing Halo.
Right.
We got to that spot, and while we were having a good time because it was his first time, and I enjoy the game, I definitely knew where to go because the level was it's identical. It's like go to the right for sure. We'd look for the arrow on the ground that's, for whatever reason, telling us this is the way to go. You would get that level on the ground, or the blinking triangle, and you'd be like, this is really on the nose. But back then, I think that's just what they had to do. Yeah, those I forgot all about that one. Any other questions or comments or thoughts before we wrap this up? Anybody doing anything amazing, studying anything, listening to anything good? I will give a shout out to a book that surprised the fuck out of me. So it's called The King in Red. And I'm assuming I thought it was going to be a zombie book. And it is, in some ways. But holy crap, is this series good. It starts out with The King in Red. It starts out with an apocalypse. But it does not go where I expected. And it is a really fast read. Even though it's long, it's just a really fucking good read. And I was sitting out on the deck a couple days ago when I was probably supposed to do some yard work, whatever. And I just had my Kindle and I was just reading it in the middle of the day. And it was night in the game, or in the book, sorry. And I was reading it going, fuck. Like, my brain just thought it was nighttime right now. Like, that's how good the guy is in writing. And he's not really well celebrated. He's got 5 in this series, I think, and a couple others. But I got to tell you, it's not rushed. So while it's not necessarily zombies, it's that there's stuff that gets introduced, but it gets introduced at a speed that doesn't feel like it's introduced like a TV show where every episode has to have a stinger. This is very comfortable. There's a mystery in this that I still, halfway in the second book, I'm still like, what the fuck? What was that thing? Like, is somebody but you're living through the characters' lives who don't know what that thing is. And he doesn't do the thing where he jumps to somebody else who explains everything because they're the scientists that worked on blah, 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 and you get exposition that way. This game is like, dude, these people have no friggin' clue at all what's going on. And you do have military people, you jump into their, world and stuff. I will say it is, in a way, it's definitely zombie-like. There's certainly those kind of characters in it, or creatures in it. But it has been a phenomenal read so far. And I'm in book 3 of 5, I think. And super fast reads, even though they're long. His writing is just, it's really nice. Very enjoyable. Do you guys have any books or music you've been listening to that you want to share?
I have a show I've been watching, an Italian series called La Storia, which is an adaptation of the Elsa Morante novel of the same name. For those who may not know, Elsa Morante was one of the most influential Italian writers of the 20th century. La Storia is one of her main works. It is basically, it's set in 1940, follows a Jewish Catholic woman who is the mother of a teenage son. The teenage son is very sort of swept up in Mussolini's propaganda, joins the fascists. She is unfortunately raped by a German soldier as he's about to get shipped to North Africa, becomes pregnant, gives birth to a son illegitimately, has to hide the son, but raises him all the same. And then they have to flee from Rome because of the Allied bombings. And they also have to avoid the fascists because they are of Jewish heritage. And the show is just really, really, it has amazing production value, amazing actors in it. It's really solidly made. I still haven't watched it through to the end, but so I'm at like episode 6 and it's brilliant so far. It is not a happy show to watch, but it does show fairly well what happens to civilian populations in war. It takes place from 1940 to 1947 in Italy, so it follows it through the war years and some of the post-war years. And yeah, it's a show I really, really recommend people look up if they're able to.
Excellent. What about you, Johnny? Anything?
Well, a few things here and there, like The Boys, House of the Dragon, stuff that not everybody, but a lot of people are watching. But I started watching something called Barry from HBO. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty good. It's with Bill Hader, right? It's got a nice mix of humor and some dark stuff. But yeah, it's pretty well done. I've been liking
it's a solid show.
Unexpected, it's just pretty unexpected from me. So
I always like I always like to have a happy, and then, well, if I'm gonna watch a sad show or something, I always like, or like a Walking Dead or something that's like everybody's dying. I always like to have the one show like that's sort of just surprising. Yeah. Each time you turn it on, you're like, okay, what's gonna happen next?
No, I agree, because I watched one episode of The Walking Dead. I was trying to catch up, trying to finish the show, but I watched one episode and I feel like I need a week break before I get to the next one, because it's whoa.
Yeah, I've been liking some of the switches up that's going on in the later episodes of The Boys, but I just sort of treat those as like digestible, fun, but just a thing that's on, and then I'll usually try to find something else that either makes me think or is not what I expect. But I've also found lately that YouTube, like science video, Kyle Hill, I've watched Kyle. I think I've finished every one of his videos 11 times. Like, it's ridiculous numbers. But I'll, watch something science, then watch something like, apocalyptic, but try to keep it a little bit positive. Because if you sit in The Boys for too long, or House of the Dragon, or a Game of Thrones, or something to that effect, after a while, you're just like, okay, this is dark as shit. I did rewatch the last of the John Wick movies, and I got to tell you, man, I feel like I don't know, I can rewatch 1 and 2 a ton of times, but man, 3 and 4, 3 I can rewatch. I've rewatched a couple times, but I mean, they're not bad. They're still really enjoyable, but there's something about them that I definitely find myself skewing towards, even with other shows, watching the first couple, and then after a while, it's not because it's the same thing either. It's like just that the thought process has changed in that show a great deal. I don't know. I've had a hard time rewatching those, and I still haven't seen Matrix. What are we on? 4?
Oh, the new one, rather the recent one.
Yeah,
the
that would
recent
be 4.
one. Yeah, 4. I still haven't watched that. I watched a little bit of it. I was like, ooh.
It looked very.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. But what I saw, I was like, damn, son.
But I also wasn't crazy about 2 or 3 either.
I was not either. I thought 1 was awesome, 2 was good, and then 3 I liked
2.
I liked
and then
2.
3 kind of went off the rails, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you see those movies and the 4th one or the 5th one, you're like, what? I know Bad Boys, people seem to like the new, what are you on, 4, I think, for Bad Boys?
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a 3. I just found that out from a Moodski because he really liked 4, and I was like, 4? What the fuck? I remember 1 and 2. I don't think I ever even knew there was a 3 of that one, and I do need to go see that. There hasn't really been anything up that I've watched lately that's been really even shocking or good either. It's been just sort of watchable. Like, there hasn't been anything that's made me go, oh, this is amazing show wise. It's been more like,
do you watch The Bear?
Maybe I told you, but I've tried watching The Bear a couple times. Just
dropped it.
Me. Yeah, it's just not for me. I've given it more than enough tries to know that those tries are successful tries, instead of like some other shows where I realize, oh, I will like this. I just don't like anybody in it. I just haven't.
Yeah,
but
I see.
I know it's super popular.
Yeah.
What are they on? Season 2 or 3? 3?
The 3rd
they
season just came out.
Did it? No, it's the 2nd season.
Nope, it's the 3rd season.
Damn.
The 2nd, they're on the 3rd.
Damn, didn't know that.
Second season was the one where they have the big dinner with the family, right, and everything.
Yeah, but that was only a couple of months ago that released.
Yeah, they've been quite quick, but this is the 3rd season.
Shen Film says 3rd came out this week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that I didn't know.
It's just been that fast. That's why you're thinking that, because I also thought it was fast. Yeah, it's definitely chaotic. I like I don't know what his name is, the guy from Shameless in it,
Yeah, he's awesome.
The cook, the main. Yeah, I like him a lot. But
phenomenal actor. That's why I gave it a try.
Plays Richie.
Yep. I have no issue giving a show a try just from one actor. Like, a lot of times I'll follow that actor and, find out what I like. This one I did really try, and I was just like, well, that is so not for me, which is weird because a lot of times I'll watch something. It doesn't matter if it's like something I'm not interested in. I'm sort of even interested in what's going on, but I didn't like the acting. I didn't really, his acting I liked. He's good.
Yeah.
But if one guy's really good and the rest aren't, I still have an issue because most shows won't just follow one person, and then the more you get those other characters, you're like, yeah, it's not what I've been enjoying. Have you been reading anything, Johnny? Normally you're reading something.
I'm going back to my big tome of H.P. Lovecraft that I picked up. It's like
very cool.
A big compendium of his stories.
Have you read Dreams in the Witch House yet?
No, not yet.
Probably my favorite.
I think last night I read Dagon, or one about Dagon. And I like it because obviously they're short. That's what they're called, but each will kind of touch on one theme or thing.
Yeah.
And every so often there is one entity or something that I find really interesting, and then I can kind of like look up more stuff about it. And oftentimes it turns out that someone either made a movie at some point, or because it is a free intellectual property, right? I think people don't need a license to.
Some of the Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu have been pretty good. The thing about the books is I feel like the short stories work better because the less I mean, Cthulhu is about like the unknowable and stuff. So like when you get a book that's like 300 or 400 pages long, unless that person's really good at writing and doesn't just mire it down with, you know, the talk of these things you can't see, and they tell you for 5 hours something you can't see, and you're like, I get it. Like can we do something? I think the short story format works the best because there's been a bunch of compendiums you can get of people who've written after him and have done short stories. I find those quite interesting because they're like a snippet, just like here's something weird. And a lot of times they end just like H.P. Lovecraft's works. Sometimes they just end. You know, you're like, well, wait, what? What's happening? It's done.
Yeah, sometimes they never reveal the bad guy in a way. Like, you know, it's
I like
all
that
about
kind of
the mystery and anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
They really lean into that, which I think it works. You know, a lot of times in movies, when we see the thing, it kind of like loses the mystery, the thrill, because now
I don't know if you guys
know
do
what it looks like.
Cloverfield, Johnny, but like I felt that the Cloverfields did a pretty good job. The one with what's her name, John Goodman, where they're in the underground bunker, I thought was well done because it's like you don't even know if it's a real thing. Cloverfield Lane, isn't that what it's called?
Let me look it up.
And it's an alien, obviously. It's not the same exact thing, but I do like. There's a couple shows, a couple movies that have hit pretty well. Most of them go too into the like body horror to where it numbs me. I'm like, whatever, this is body horror. Oh, look, somebody's body is a spine. I actually like it more when it's a mystery and then you get a little snippet at the end.
There was Blair Witch Project.
You liked Blair Witch Project?
Yeah.
Did you like that ending kind of thing? I did. Yeah, I agree. I told you how that got ruined for me though, right? Because I
think so. Yeah,
I thought it was well. They didn't say it wasn't real. I thought it was like found footage or possibly a real mystery. And then that radio announcement was like, "Yeah, the totally made up film." And I was like, "Oh," because it was right before we went to the theater. And it's not like I expected a real supernatural thing. I thought it was going to be like Bigfoot footage and kind of thing where it was like all put together and interviews. And they did a really good job with the acting.
I think so as well.
The ad lib was just phenomenal. It was still enjoyable, but I remember going like, God damn, I wish I hadn't heard that. I would have loved to have gone in and thought
just
maybe
the overall creepiness of being lost in the woods and the idea that there are something out there. It leaves like the little piles of rocks when you wake up in the morning.
SBZ brings up that The Mist was pretty good. I think The Mist is probably one of the best Kuntz, Stephen King, Cthulhu things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, and I love the ending. I don't care what anybody says.
Dude, and
one of the greatest.
It had the actor that passed away recently from.
It did, Commander
Brooklyn.
Holt. Yep.
Yeah, Andre, right?
Yeah, Andre. Yeah, I can't remember his last name. Man, he was good. He was good.
Brower. Yeah.
Is that his name? Andrew.
I think it's Andre Brower.
Yeah, that guy was awesome, man. Yeah, that was just a phenomenal movie from start to finish because it was like it started out so mundane. The guy's boat gets smashed by the tree, and you're just everything is so laid back, and then they're driving in the car and they start talking about little things they had heard about the military base, and you're just getting snippets, and then they go, everything just sort of goes up, and the ending to me. Yes, admittedly, I'm dire, but I laughed so hard because it was just so funny because it was like, oh my God, that was the worst ending you could possibly imagine for a character. But to me, I rarely get surprised. And so to be surprised like that and see what happened and go, oh, what? Oh my God, are you kidding? And I was like, I'd love to be surprised. It's so rare. Most people won't. Or they try to pretend they're going to surprise you, but it is it is the ending that's bad. And you're like, I sort of expected that. That one crescendoed.
also a problem that comes when you just consume a lot of media because you become more media literate. So you start to learn, oh, this is where
you pick up on those little things,
setting up
right?
For that, and
yeah. It's hard to surprise people. So when you get that one that does, it's all I do. I think that's and there's a couple movies lately that I've been watching, that I realize that's why I like it. So for example, I was watching Basic Instinct, the old movie. And I don't like it. One of my friends was over and he was like, you skipped the sex scene. And I was like, that's because the movie isn't about that to me. It's actually about the police detective trying to figure out what the is going on.
Murder investigation.
And even at the very end, you're still like, is that what happened? There's another one that is very lesser known and isn't as good, but still has a great surprise, Malice, with Nicole Kidman and Bill Pullman, the president from Independence Day. And the ending, dude, I remember in the theater, even at the ending going, what the oh man, I wasn't expecting that. And I like those kind of things. They're like Silver said, you become media literate after a while, and then you become literate of them trying to make you surprised. Then you become literate of them trying to pretend to surprise you, but they're not going to surprise you. They're going to have the end. Pretty soon you're bouncing around. And so when somebody finally veers a little to the right or the left, it's like, that's awesome.
Speaking of that, though, did you see they're making a new Penguin show?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. Colin Farrell, man. I like him. Straight up.
Yeah.
I actually like him in almost everything I see.
He looks like completely different in it, but...
He does, but he does. No, you're right. He does. His eyes look like Colin Farrell's eyes. So, like, you can't...
Yeah, you can kind of see... Yeah.
He was also incredible in the Banshees of Inisherin.
For sure.
Shows Ireland very beautifully.
That's with the big guy from the 27 Days Later, whatever. Brendan Gleeson, yeah. Because I remember they were talking, they loved working with each other. That was sort of a thing that they had wanted to do. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, Martin McDonagh film.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one at all.
Also not a happy viewing though, just so be prepared.
Oh, you mean for that one particular, the ending? In
just the ending and really like the overall tone of the film. Even though it is a comedy, it's very darkly funny, and it gets quite dark.
Phantom's movie based on Kuntz was good. Yeah, Kuntz is like Clive Cussler though. He has bad luck with movie studios. Some authors should just stay away from movie studios. Like Stephen King's had hit and miss. I think his TV shows are much better than his movies. Like Storm of the Century is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, but his movies have not really. I mean,
there are a lot of stinkers.
There's a lot of stinkers, and even the new It versus the old It. I'm just the new It.
Funny enough, it wasn't it.
It wasn't it. Yeah, it wasn't it. And I mean, that shows my age, but the old It handled.
Yeah.
It handled it. They didn't have the money for special effects, maybe, or the special effects. So what they did show was just a little bit more cerebral than the new one. And I get why people like the new one. But it was more in your face.
I was still mixed on that one, but I liked it better. I liked the older one.
Yeah, the old one for you in particular, because you're a full 15 years younger than me. I'm sure to you it looks old. It's...
Well, yeah, because I watched it, years after it came out, right? So yeah, it looked dated, obviously, when I saw it, but still, it had some good parts.
I like a lot of remakes, but the other one I didn't like was The Fog. It was John Carpenter's. The original Fog was fucking haunting, and it was done on like $10, like maybe $7. I mean, that's probably all they spent. It was ridiculous how little money was spent. But then you see the new one with all the money, and you're like.
Did you like The Thing? They remade that one too,
I didn't like the remake as much. The original's a classic. Like, I can still watch it. And
it's
practical effects.
Goated, right?
Yeah. But I'm not one of those people that also has to hold on to the originals. There's there's remakes of things where I'm like, wow, the remake is way better. It just happens to be that we're talking about horror, where I think a lot of times when I see a bunch of CG, or they try to remake horror and you already know where it's going, so it doesn't work as well. A lot of it, for me personally, but I think when you look at like games and remakes, I'm also pretty open. Like, I sort of have to see how it's all going to come together. But it just depends. What has there been anything else music-wise before we wrap it up? Any music you guys been listening to? New music? Or any other new paintings, new art?
I've been listening to quite a bit of Andy Timmons. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a guitar player. He has lovely solo album that I listened to. Let me just dig up.
Oh yeah, I know who that is. I've seen him on YouTube.
Yeah. So I want to shout out the album because I like doing this. I think we talked about it. I kind of like listening to an album from people, instead of going song to song like the youngsters do.
Right.
I kind of like, here's an album. I'm going to immerse myself in it. And, there's a reason why they chose this to be track 2 or track 3.
Right.
Like, I kind of get into it, I get curious. And so this one is called Theme from a Perfect World by Andy Timmons. And I really liked it. It's mostly instrumental, but I loved just working to it was phenomenal. But, because it is instrumental, it doesn't really distract you from what you're doing. And it was really, really melodic and really nice.
I'll check that out too. I asked people in chat to suggest shows, movies, or books.
I know that they released a new Star Wars show, The Acolyte. Have either of you? Oof. Oh, that expression. Oof. No, it ain't it. Okay, because what I thought, Karak, right? The Acolyte kind of sounds like the story of Darth Plagueis and Palpatine. Darth Plagueis, of course, the master of Palpatine, and he kills him in the end, just like he tells in I think episode 3 when he's talking to Anakin. He says, "Oh, Darth Plagueis," and he's telling the story of his master, who he killed, right? So I love I listened to the audiobook for the book Darth Plagueis.
Great audiobook.
One of the few that I've done. Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and he was a fucking smart character, and yeah, it's very cool. But anyway, I got excited because I thought, wait, is the Acolyte about that?
There's one amazing part in the Acolyte, and that's the fucking credits. I'm just joking. There is one really cool bit that I can't really, without spoiling anything, I can't even really suggest what it is, but there's some lore building they do that was only really in the side stuff that they've neutered now. And they're starting, if you notice, remember when they said, okay, the old stuff, it's not canon, only this is canon. Well, if you've noticed, what they really meant to say was only the shit we're putting in our stuff is canon, because they have been adding old Republic stuff. There's something in this that is a amazing callback. It is approximately 3 minutes of so far what has been released from that show. It is fucking horrendous. I am blown away by how bad that show is. And what's funny is I'm pretty laid back on Star Wars stuff. Not the movies, because you're spending a bunch of money. You're going to sit for 2 hours. But Sleeve will say something's bad, and Sleeve's really hyperbolic if he doesn't like something. So, and he and I will joke back and forth, but I'll be like, you know what, I actually liked it. Or he'll say, you know what, Karak actually liked it. So he had said he didn't like it. And I was like, whatever, maybe he's just, maybe whatever. But he couldn't have prepared me for how bad it is. And I'm not even depressed about it. I'm just like, okay, that's another Star Wars show. I've liked some Star Wars shows. I've liked an episode here or there. Dude, Carrie-Anne Moss, I love her as an actress.
Yeah. Oh, she's Trinity from...
Yeah.
Matrix, yes.
From Matrix.
It is the... Dude, I don't even know another movie or show in my life where I've actually assumed the person was just CGI'd in and actually phoned it in.
Like phoned it in.
It's... I mean, I was watching going, you had everything. You had everything to make an amazing moment in a show. What in the fuck did I just watch? And that's pretty much the entire thing. And it's not even, it's more just disappointment. It's that cliff of like, oh, wow.
Is it because it's like a shorter appearance from her? Like it's like a cameo more than anything?
It is as if she didn't even know she was in a goddamn Star Wars show. It is so weirdly off-putting and off-tuned to what you...
Just reading some words disconnected.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad too. I mean, especially because I know you guys liked Andor a lot. I think Andor is the one that's considered.
Yeah, I very much like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that these guys, they can do good stuff, and they don't, and then they do, and so I'm just sort of like, okay.
I've purposefully avoided it because I have no confidence in it, because I really didn't like Book of Boba Fett. I wasn't crazy about the second season of The Mandalorian either. And I really didn't like Obi-Wan, like the Kenobi show either,
Right.
really. So yeah. It also, like, yeah, it feels weird for me, the new Star Wars, because there's like, and especially like when you tie it into like what I'm seeing with Outlaws, like there's some stuff they're doing with the universe that's just really weird. Like Nar Shaddaa as a location still hasn't been featured in any of these Star Wars properties, even though it's like the smuggler's moon, it's the hub of the entire Star Wars like criminal underworld, and it hasn't really been featured yet in any like Disney Star Wars property. Like it's like the Star Wars underworld in this Star Wars is Tatooine, which is the most backwards planet on the Outer Rim, basically. It's just weird.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I like lightsaber fights and stuff like that. I would agree. I also played didn't play, but watched Ewan McGregor's the Obi-Wan one. And so it depends on when you're born. That's how you're going to direct, right? Because what you live through, what all your life experiences are. There's certainly something to be said that as people age, their thought processes towards what it means to be a Star Wars character is going to change, which I think we are seeing. So I think I've just aged out of whatever their idea is of Star Wars. I've just aged out of it. I'm not even like, I don't even feel like I'm missing anything. I feel like somebody out there is obviously, including kids who aren't going to care as much, are obviously being serviced and enjoying it. So they're going to have their Ewoks like I did when I was a kid. And somebody said the same thing when I liked Star Wars, and they're like, well, that's no Flash Gordon, whatever. You know, there's always a comparison is what I'm saying. So I'm pretty okay with it. But I will say that it is odd to me that they keep going to like an Obi-Wan and they try to unearth more. And in fact, all they do is make what you did see questionable when you were instead. So it's like, why are we seeing Obi-Wan? Especially when the cartoons, from what I understand and what I've seen, a lot of the cartoons have done very well. I've actually found that when I go and see all the stuff with Anakin and Obi-Wan in the cartoons, I'm like, dude, those are actually some pretty heady stories. And it could be the timeline. It could be how they're doing it, where the TV shows have missed almost every time. Again, Andor seems to have not missed. I like Mandalorian season 1 somewhat. I found some really stupid parts, but yeah, it's just is what it is. I don't get too caught up in it anymore, but I would say I'm like Silver, where instead I'm just sort of like, oh, they've let me down. As what I mean by that is I don't even mean let me down. I mean, they haven't continued the arc of feeling that I used to get from them, and now I'm okay with it. The only things that really did bother me were the movies that came out after the prequels. I thought those were horrendous, and I couldn't figure out even what the fuck was happening. But by the time I got done with it, they sort of did it's almost like if you have a friendship or a relationship where it doesn't go good long enough that instead of having good times that offset the bad times, you can't really remember the good times anymore. And you're like, okay, that was a time frame. And that's life.
It's a little bit like you had a soda you always loved, but they don't do the flavor you liked anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, you keep trying. It's, no, maybe I'll like this, but no, it's never the same. And so you just remember to
end this on something good. Oh, yeah.
I mean, Andor specifically, I think, though, was probably the best Star Wars related media I've seen in 20 years. Like, not just like specifically for like the plot or stuff, also just like the production design of that show is so different, where a lot of the stuff in that show is made with a 1970s aesthetic to sort of recollect the movies. So like hairdos or some, even like some clothing designs and stuff. like really recalls like that 1970s production feel of the original A New Hope movie. They sort of evoke that really successfully, that sensibility in the show, as one of the things I admire the most about it. But yeah, that show definitely was a highlight in recent sort of Star Wars for me.
I thought the Clone Wars, just to say another highlight, I thought the Clone Wars at least, maybe it was the amount, because cartoons, and there's a longer series of cartoon, there's longer, not longer episodes, but more episodes. I felt that they nailed the older feel more than any of the shows have overall. But I would agree, Andor's clothing hits better than some of the other shows that feel like their home theater, or not home theater, I'm sorry, high school theater clothing. There's one or two shots in particular we joke about in the Discord where people are walking around, the stuff looks like it was purchased from a cosplay store. It doesn't look like it has a lived-in feel to it, but such is life. I did want to end this on a good note. Two things. SBZ, $5 Super Chat. Great stream as always. This is not much, but hopefully enough to soothe the pain from talking about the Acolyte. And we'll end on two things. If you're a fan of crime procedural, but you're okay with a little comedy, White Collar is on Netflix, and they have decided to bring the entire cast back for another season. I don't know how many, but that is an awesome show. Funny.
Yeah.
Pretty lighthearted, but we're rewatching that. And lastly, as I wrap this up, to win a copy of Erdtree, when we close this, go to the podcast video and leave a comment. The question is going to be, I wrote it right here. Okay, leave a comment. What is the best map design in a game and why? So you have to describe, you can't just be like fucking, I don't know, League of Legends, because there's 3 lanes. You have to explain why the map design was good in the game, why it fit the game. We'll announce the winners next Friday at the starting of the podcast. You can do the same thing on iTunes or Spotify. When you leave a review, you can leave a comment, and I'll check those as well. That'll be it for us. Thank you to Johnny and Silver. Actually, Johnny, what are you streaming tomorrow? Sorry, my apologies.
Tomorrow, I'm streaming League of Legends, playing with viewers and stuff. So... yeah. Johnny plays live.
I just dissed on League of Legends, and Johnny's like, "We're streaming League of Legends."
I know, it's
tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah,
hey,
we'll talk
Johnny
about
will go
how
left
the map
lane.
is amazing.
I'm just joking.
There you go.
Yeah, top lane for Johnny.
Also,
always top, never a bottom.
Always top, never bottom.
Also, I am still uploading Ghost of Tsushima videos.
To Silver Hawkins on YouTube.
Interested. Yeah.
Silver Hawkins, and it's on hardest.
It's on lethal difficulty.
Lethal difficulty, not hardest. This was a difficulty.
No, because honestly, I think hard. I actually think hard is the harder difficulty in the game.
Oh, gotcha. All right, well, there you go. Silver Hawkins and Johnny Plays Live. Peace out, everybody. See you next week.
Take care.
Bye-bye.